ahead and call to order the Town of Essex Selectboard meeting for Monday, November 4th. Agenda additions or changes? Anything from staff?
None from staff.
Anything from the board?
Madam Chair, I'd like to pull out item H under business items. I have a typed report to save time tonight so that the BCA doesn't have to take up any extra time because we're all members of the BCA. So each of you have a copy and there's enough for the public to look at also.
Any objection from the board? Would someone like to make a motion to amend the agenda?
I make the motion that we amend the agenda as proposed, removing business item H.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. We have an approved amended agenda. Next on our agenda is public to be heard. Public to be heard is a time for members of the public to engage with the select board on items which are located on the consent agenda or items that are not on the agenda. If you are in the room, you can raise your physical hand. If you're online, you can push the reactions button. It's a little heart at the bottom center of your screen. You should have the option to raise your hand from there. So any public to be heard? Don't see any in the room.
Margaret Smith has her hand up.
Margaret, go ahead and state your full name and make your comment.
Hi, Margaret Smith. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to suggest, I know that you have an incredibly busy schedule, but I pulled up a copy of the Williston Observer, and I'm just impressed by how much information there is in it. And the Essex Reporter really doesn't do justice to all the stuff that's going on in the town. I know Williston has a huge tax base, but I'm just wondering, is there any way we can maybe start publishing an Essex Observer or some such newspaper that gives us more information and a place to share upcoming events and important town business? Thank you.
It's the Essex Reporter. We do have the Town of Essex newsletter that goes out. That's monthly, correct? On a monthly basis via email. I also believe that is located on the website. Margaret, if you want to follow up with me directly on, things that you've seen in the Observer that you'd like to see more of, I'd be more than happy to take that feedback.
Okay, I my screen temporarily froze, so I'm sorry. I will try and reach out to you at some point.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any other public comment, either in the room or online? Seeing none, we are 2 minutes early at this point for our warned public hearing for 6:35. 1 minute, so I think we should probably wait for that to coincide with the actual warned agenda item, since we do need to start public hearing at the time that it is warned. You should have brought your ukulele.
Should we approve consent, or is that a agenda change that we didn't vote on?
I'll allow it if you want to make the motion.
Make the motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. Nope, there is no discussion on consent. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nay. No, say nay. Okay, motion carries 5-0. And we are now at the time of our public hearing. Perfect, thank you for that, Andy. I figured we would open the public hearing this evening. There is the verbiage of the question that will be on the ballot. Kendall, as clerk, would you mind reading that?
Oh, no, not at all.
Sorry
Give me
to
a second to find
bring
it.
that on you. just so everyone is fully aware of what the question is that we're about to hear about and take comment via public hearing on.
So you want me to read the article?
Yes, please.
Okay, shall the voters of the town of Essex authorize the select board to borrow by issuance of bonds or notes an amount not to exceed $1,750,000 for a term of up to 20 years and not to exceed an interest rate of 2% for the purpose of upgrading the Heritage Estates pump station and Center Road sewer force main with debt service costs borne by the users of the town municipal wastewater system.
Thank you, Kendall. At this point, I'll turn it over to Aaron to give some background and information on the question.
Okay. So this project began, it started back in 22. After the town department suffered 3 breaks in over a year, totaling about $175,000 total cost. At that point, staff recommended the board go ahead and initiate a design. Contract was awarded to Recreational Engineering. They are currently at 90% design plans and to submit to the state for next. At this point, these breaks basically occurred on an 8-inch ductile iron force main, sewer force main, from the Heritage pump station neighborhood, and considerably deep. Portions were well over 15 feet deep. When we looked at the pipe, assessed the cause of these breaks, found some intrusion on the pipe, and one break was actually caused by faulty insulation. What we decided to do was to replace this force main, all 2,400 linear feet of it. This force main is on Center Road, roughly at the intersection of Saybrook, all the way down to the Price Chopper intersection. As part of this project, we're also going to be doing some updates in the pump station. We're going to be putting in variable frequency drives, get a little bit more efficiency out of our pumps, a little bit more control. We're looking to get this project out to bid early spring and begin construction this summer. Some of the major reasons for this project: decrease future maintenance costs. We don't want to go through this again. $175,000 is about 10% of what the total project cost is. We just don't have the money in the budget, and it's better to plan for these events and or replace when we can than try to find the money to react to our system. Couple other benefits: public health, environmental benefits. Every time this breaks, one of those breaks had been leaking for a considerable amount of time. Where does it go? It goes into the groundwater, finds its way to the surface eventually, but there's a time there when we don't know that it's broken and the raw sewage is just going into the environment. And also, we need to be in compliance with our regulations, both state, federal. We have a permit through the city's treatment plant that we also have to maintain. So who pays for this project? If the bond vote is approved, this project will be paid for all residents and businesses that are actually connected to the sewer system. Those not connected, or those who are just receiving water only, do not pay for this bond. The impact to the individual average residential user is about $46.15 a year increase in their sewer rate, which accounts for about $3.85 a month. And again, I want to reiterate, there is no increase for residents who are not connected to the sewer system.
Go ahead, Don.
What would happen if the bond doesn't pass, Aaron?
We would likely have to find other ways to pay for the project. It may delay it a year. Still, in my professional opinion, that force main should be replaced as soon as we possibly can. It's just going to be a maintenance nightmare.
Okay, so to reiterate, we have opened the public hearing for the Center Road Force Main bond question. So I'd like to immediately just turn it right over to any members of the public who have questions, comments, clarifications. Now is your time to get your questions answered on this item that will be on the ballot. See no hands online. See no hands in the room. Yes, come on up. State your name and ask your question.
Have a great, yeah, I'm Hubie Norton. One question, this force main, was that installed at the same time the rest of the sewer project was done through Essex Center and down Sand Hill Road and so on?
Yes.
The question I have is, are there other force mains that were installed during that same time that might be in jeopardy? Is there, was there a particular problem with this section? Or are there other sections? And 18 feet deep seems unusual.
Excessive, yes.
For a force main.
Very. Yes, there were other ductile iron force mains installed during the same vintage. We are trying to find alternatives into looking and assessing these lines. We are going to be initiating a capital project for water sewer here probably in December, January, using a different technology where they actually insert something into the pipe and it will flow through the pipe and assess and look for, and it can literally find areas where there's a leak and assess the corrosion and the integrity of the pipe from inside as it flows through the pipe. So there are options to look and see rather than just to visually dig up and verify, because the cost to dig a hole down to the pipe 15, 18 feet deep is excessive.
Yeah. Thank you. I was just curious that knowing that, there were other sections, is this, or we're going to see more of this and so on. So there's understood.
Yep.
Thank you.
Still see no hands online. Any other public comment, questions, clarifications in the room? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Does the board have any questions, comments, clarifications?
I was just curious how old the force main actually is.
1984.
1984.
40 years.
Yeah, it's time. Thank you.
I make the motion that we close the public hearing.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a
Second.
second? Thank you, Don. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Public hearing is now closed.
Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to our first official business item, interview and possible appointment of a volunteer to serve on the Economic Development Commission, Keith Dunbar. Come on up. And if you would, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested.
My name is Keith Dunbar. I've been a resident of Essex for over 30 years now, and as a resident, I've enjoyed living here. And in my current employment, I'm a director of membership and development for the Lake Champlain Chamber, and kind of our theme is right on line with what the Economic Development Commission is. And I just really feel like at this point in my life, I'd really like to make sure I can give back to the town of everything that I've received from it. I've raised 2 children here. One just recently got married here. Hopefully that they'll come back. It's one of my biggest goals. I'd like to make sure that there's economic opportunity for them.
Great, thank you. Board questions? Kendall?
I was just curious, will there be an opportunity for you to interact very closely with your professional work and the commission?
I've already asked my manager about that, and I'll just want to make sure that I do keep things separately from that. I mean, I think probably just on the interaction side, it'll just be, just on a day-to-day basis, I do interact with a lot of people, so I think it'll just be a good opportunity to learn more about what the needs are for the Essex business community, and just to see whatever I can do to kind of help them be viable and just have a good future for the town.
Have you looked at the EDC's mission statement, and how do you feel you can contribute to that?
Well, like I said, as being part of I've been in the business community for 30 years in different positions within Essex and Chittenden County and the state of Vermont. And I just feel that as the goal of economic prosperity for businesses within the town, just being able to interact with them, listen to what they're saying, bring things back to the commission, and make sure that they're a voice that's heard.
And my second question is, if you, when serving on the commission, do not agree with the decision, or they don't agree with what you want to do, how would you handle that situation?
Probably dig into it a little bit deeper and just find out why. I'm never afraid to ask questions. If there is an opportunity that I feel strongly about, I'm not afraid to voice my opinion on that.
Thank you.
Ethan?
I was gonna ask if you were familiar with the EDC here in Essex, and then my second question was gonna be, do you have any ideas for how the commission can better interact with the business community?
Well, just what I know about the commission is through Jean O'Sullivan. I've known Jean for a number of years, and just to kind of interact with her, and she was the one that thought that I might be a good fit for joining the commission. And I really don't think that I could make anything about changes that I could offer right now. I mean, without really seeing the inner workings.
So Keith and I have known each other for much of the 30 years that he's been a resident, and he mentioned that one of his children was married. Well, a child married one of my children, so Keith is my son's father-in-law. So, but I don't see any conflict in my participating in this discussion or consideration of appointment. So, the question, Keith, what does it mean to you to be a public servant?
I think just giving back, as I said before, is, I've reaped the benefits of living in Essex for 30 years. As I said, I put 2 kids through the school system, great friends, neighbors, just the town as an overall has been great. And just wanting to give back and just to be that person to be a voice for people that aren't heard. That's what I think is being a public servant.
Thank you.
So usually I only ask one question, but today I'm going to deviate from that a little bit. Understanding that the EDC does meet on weekday mornings at this point, is that something that you can commit to?
I already cleared that before I
Okay,
put in my application.
great.
They know it meets at 8 o'clock on Thursday mornings.
Okay, great. And my usual question is, do you have any questions for us?
No, not really. Like I said, it's, Ethan's question was great, and it was, I'd love to know more about kind of the inner workings of the commission, and if I do get appointed, just be able to come back and maybe sit down at the meetings later on.
Okay. All right, so typically how these go is if someone would like to make a motion at this point, we also have the ability to discuss appointments in executive session. So I will pause for just a moment to see what the board wishes to do.
I wish to appoint Keith Dunbar to the Economic Development Committee.
Is that a motion?
It is.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second, with clarification of the remaining term.
Yeah.
I didn't see it in the memo. Oh, I do see it.
I thought it was
The
2020.
vacant seat remaining through
2026.
June 30th, 2026.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, So motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Our next agenda item is for public input. It does state potential action, excuse me, about the future management of the Tree Farm Recreational Facility. For those who are not familiar, the Tree Farm is jointly owned in whole by the town of Essex and the city of Essex Junction. Currently, the management of said facility is performed by the Tree Farm Management Group. Public input is vital into the future path for management and oversight of that property. Greg, anything to add?
Just that the current lease agreement with the Tree Farm Management Group runs through December 31st of next year, 2025. But as part of that agreement between the City of Essex Junction, Town of Essex, and the Tree Farm Management Group, the City Council of Essex Junction and the Select Board is supposed to give the Tree Farm Management Group an indication by the end of this year as to whether or not to extend that lease or take a different approach.
So that future state and that potential action that is warned on our agenda this evening, as stated, public input is vital to that. So I will go ahead and just open it right up to public input. Again, those in the room can raise their physical hand. Those online can use the reactions button at the lower middle of your screen and then select the raise hand option from there. This is for any opinions on future management of the Tree Farm Recreational Facility. Ken, come on up.
Ken Signorello. I guess somebody should say something. The Tree Farm Management Group has been doing a great job, and I think with representation from both municipalities on the board, you could never pay for the volunteer service. The value is great, and I strongly favor continuing with the Tree Farm Management Group, and the fact that the property is owned the way it is owned means that everybody has to agree, and I think that that puts us in a situation where for services to continue to the community, both communities, there's great incentive for both parties to agree. I think that we should be firm and stick with the Tree Farm Management Group. Thanks.
And for, and for those online, I will note that there are members of the Tree Farm Management Group here in the audience. So if you do have any questions or clarifications on what something means, what it doesn't mean in current state, those are welcome comments and questions as well. I do see Rebecca Robinson has a hand up. Rebecca, go ahead.
Hi, Rebecca Robinson. I'm a parent in the community, and I think it would be amazing for it to maintain under the Tree Farm Management Group to ensure that both the town as well as the city of Essex Junction remain, equally participating in what is occurring at the tree farm, because it greatly affects both of our communities and it's a huge benefit for all of us within Essex. So while we have gone through some of the demergers from the city as well as the town, I think that there's a huge benefit to making sure that both stakeholders are at the table in partnering through with the tree management group. So just as a parent and also from an economic development commission, I think that there's a ton of benefit.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions, comments?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
Make the motion that the select board offer a new lease to the Tree Farm Management Group and authorize staff to negotiate a lease between the Tree Farm Management Group, the City of Essex Junction, and the Town of Essex.
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Don. Discussion from the board.
I think that will be a huge benefit to all the parties.
Kendall? No other discussion? All those in favor?
Greg's gonna-
Sorry.
Just
go
for
ahead.
the point of clarification, the motion is to negotiate a lease. I would, if we get to that point, bring it back to the board for ratification or authorization to ratify it. So I just wanted
That was the intent? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Our next agenda item is a discussion with the Energy Committee. I do believe that
Will Dodge is on.
online.
Hey, good evening.
Hi, Will. So,
Uh,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the flow of how these have been going, if you would like to make any comments on what you're working on as far as work plan goes, if you have any questions for the board. If not, I do see these as more of just a free-flowing discussion between yourself and board members here, and there will be opportunity for public comment as well.
Sure. Well, so in terms of our work plan for 2025, I think the big ones that we have on our agenda is one, providing input on some of the energy and efficiency related components of the Upper Main Street project. And that includes on November 13th, we're actually going to have Ann Janda, as well as I think her name is Deborah Lee, who's coming to talk about geothermal options. And then the very next day, we're actually going to have as many Energy Committee members as possible go to South Burlington for, an event that's more climate focused. But part of what we want to look at is kind of parts of the design of that building to be thinking about that for Upper Main Street. I think in 2025, we're thinking of a repeat of the button-up event that we did at the Champlain Valley Fair, where we had about 300, we may have roughly, I think it was 347 points of contact over several days worth of both us, the Essex members volunteering, as well as volunteers from other Chittenden County energy committees. We're going to be working on a draft RFP for looking at solar development, utility scale solar development on the town parcel off of Old Stage Road. I think it's 29 Indian Brook is the road. I think we talked about that a couple months ago. We've produced an RFP. We've sent that to Greg. Greg says he's going to be taking a look at that. A component of this, going to the question that you often ask about, do we have any fiscal requirements? I think that the way that we've modeled the RFP, which is after a very similar RFP that was used for a solar project for town of Milton, we think that maybe the right approach is to be hiring a consultant. And what I don't know is, based on the town's purchasing policy, does that itself require an RFP for the consultant? The DPW has worked in the past, or at least has had contact with a guy named Kurt Mayland, who incidentally was the consultant that the town of Milton used. And I think he'd be very good as somebody who could kind of run and provide good advice on the RFP. But that obviously needs to be worked out. And the other component of that needs to be worked out is the legal analysis of the RFP. So in addition to that, we have started bare bones working on a program that Green Mountain Power promotes called Try an EV, where we would ideally have various EVs at Essex Experience. Sometime we're thinking like May, June timeframe, and give people an opportunity to come out and try them and see how well they work. People who actually use EVs seldom, if ever, go back to non-EVs. So that's something that we would like to promote and is consistent with the current town plan. We've talked before about the adoption and implementation of a new charter. I think I have some clerical work to do on that, but I think there's more fundamentally a question about what is the best way to provide funding. And I know Greg was going to get back to me with a couple of options on that. And I think is also speaking with Sean on that issue. Certainly, if we were able to get an RFP for utility scale solar, that would help a lot with providing more permanent source of funding for the Energy and Climate Committee. The other items that we have on our work plan include reaching out to and partnering with the Essex Westford School District on energy improvements, supporting and documenting and celebrating a lot of the efforts that Sean McNamara has been doing, providing efficiency improvements for the town. I think a big one, and this is one that I know is consistent with one of the missions that the select board has, is our recruiting. We're about to be down 2 members because David Scopin, who has been a wonderful member, at least since 2017, is going to be resigning. And frankly, I think the real impulse behind turning the Energy Committee into an Energy and Climate Committee is the hope that that will help us to get younger people onto the board. And then the last one that I will point out is just writing grants for potential improvements. I think we've seen some clarification as part of our charter improvement process for that. And so that's something that we're going to be talking about going forward. In terms of what could be working well as far as communication goes, I think we're very grateful to the town for deciding to use Zoom instead of Teams, because that has given us the capability that we just used today to use the summary function in Zoom to allow us to get our minutes done much more easily and much more effectively. So why don't I leave it at that for now and see if there's any questions.
Questions from the board?
I have none.
Andy?
Will, I've been, we started our budget season, so I've been looking at the FY26 budget. And one of the things I noticed in there is that the revenues from this car charger that's just behind the wall behind me here has been increasing every year. It's not a big amount. I mean, it's not a big revenue generator, and I think it's more the intent of it is to support the infrastructure for EV charging, public EV charging. It's the only one that the town has, and it's not even in our town. Just wondering if that's something that the Energy Committee could look at. Is there another place appropriate in town where I know the new Upper Main Street will probably have that, that will come, that'll be discussed around that. But, should we put one in Sand Hill Park or someplace where we're providing support for, people who need the use of a public charger? Again, it's the only one we've got. It generates, $900 a year. It's not a moneymaker, but I don't know if the state has funds available. Something you could look into to try to expand our charging.
Yes, thank you, Andy. I think it's a great point. The state does have funds available. And I do think that we've talked internally about other places that would be appropriate for the town to put them. The big one in my mind is the lower parking lot of Indian Brook, because that's where people go to spend quite a lot of time, like at least an hour if they're taking a loop around the brook, and it'd be a perfect place given that there's a pole about, I think we determined it was about 500 feet from the from the dam itself. We looked into hydro for that dam. I don't think we're going to make much headway with that, but I do think that that would be a great place for charging. You've mentioned Sand Hill Park. I also think that potentially Saxon Hill, another place where people are spending a lot of time on town property, would be a good one. And of course, the other obvious one that was mentioned earlier, to the extent that the town has ownership or some ownership interest in it, would of course be the place where people spend a lot of time watching their kids play soccer, that being the tree farm.
The other thing is, it's my understanding that our last energy plan or whatever included the city of Essex Junction, and I guess I'm not caught up on where things are with getting a redo of that for just the town. Is that?
You know, we don't have it in our work plan. It's something that we could put into our work plan. I know it's contemplated in the town plan. I just think it was a couple leagues under some of the other goals that we had. But since Ann Janda is going to be coming to speak with us on November 13th, I think that would be a good time to potentially to talk about that, since we'll have her in the room and we'll be thinking about it in the context especially of both, you know, new housing that's anticipated to be going up around Essex Experience. That seems to be, I know that's a topic that was also at least in the newsletter about things the select board's talking about, as well as the Upper Main Street project. So yeah, I think if that's something, if that's of interest to the select board, we can certainly put that on our list.
And I think it also ties into your interest in developing a municipally owned solar array, so that we, I've asked the question a couple times. You know, we write checks to Sandhill Solar every month for the solar that we get, that we already, you know, have access to, and I don't have a good feel at all over how much of our energy use is coming from solar already. So that's a question that I will be asking when if you come back and about a solar array, is, you know, how much do we actually need?
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, and it all has to be disaggregated basically because of the vote. In other words, that the energy plan, such as it is from 2017 for Essex, which is technically Essex Junctions, but it's all wrong because all the information has been aggregated. Plus, there's also this question about Global Foundries is kind of infused in that. So the document's basically worthless as it is right now.
The board all set? All right. Well, thank you for being here this evening. While you're still present here, I do just want to insert not a personal comment, but a parallel comment that this Saturday, as a reminder, will be the monthly coffees with committees. Andy and I will be there on behalf of the select board. So since we do have members of committees here, I just wanted to mention that as a plug to, we will be there for coffee with committees.
And you'll remind me briefly of the time, so I make sure that I'm there.
Yes. 10 to 12.
10 to 12.
10 to 12.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracy.
Oh, my wife just found out.
Thanks for joining, Will.
Thank you. Good night.
And next on the agenda is discussion with the Essex Free Library Board of Trustees.
I need to.
Nope. I am following my alphabet this evening.
Okay.
I do need to.
Yep, go ahead.
So, Janet's my wife, just disclosing that. I don't see any conflict with listening to what she has to say, so.
I'll remind him of that later if you need me to.
Yeah. Okay, now I know what he's doing Saturday morning. Hi, I'm Janet Watts. I'm the chair of the Essex Free Library Trustees. I talked to you last year about what the trustees were doing. We had a really busy year this year. Did a lot. Our normal business has been awesome. We've had as many visits, if not more, visits and checkouts at the library. So things are going really well there. One of the things we did last year after I talked to you was we started distributing harm reduction packs, and that process has gone really, really well. We've had no issues at all with distributing them. We've distributed 73 from February to October. We're still distributing gun locks, and we have COVID tests still. If you're looking for COVID tests, we just got a new shipment, so they're in the library for free. Last summer, there was a really big library bill in the Vermont House and Senate that got passed. It's called Act 220. Some of the things in it didn't really affect us. Like there's a public safety piece that says that libraries now are equivalent to schools for public safety. So if you come into the library with a gun or a weapon, the charges are the same as if you took a gun into a school, which is nice. There's a material selection policy that they've asked for. We actually already have one that matches their requests. We use the U.S. Department of Libraries' right to read as part of our library selection policy. So we already had one exactly what they needed, and people can come and a procedure to challenge books. That's already, always had one. And we had updated it last year before this bill passed. So it's completely up to date. The biggest change that we had is that you shall not disclose records to library records to anybody unless it's parents or guardians of children less than 12. They changed that from less than 16. So we had to come up with procedures to handle that. So when 12 to 16-year-olds get library cards, they have to say if we want, for instance, to call home, can we leave a message with the name of the book? And the children have to answer this question. It can't be the parents. And we can't disclose records unless there's a warrant. So it's less than 12. And they put that in place last summer. As you guys all know, there were changes to open meeting law that affected us and affected all the committees. So we now are recording our meetings. Still working on getting sound right. Apparently we're struggling with that a little bit. But we recorded our first 2 meetings this year. And the big thing that happened is starting last year, we worked on updating our strategic plan. And we did a survey. We put out a survey to the community using Front Porch Forum, using the newsletter, leaving it at the library. We got over 200 respondents, and we used that information to build a strategic plan that we're going to use for the next 3 years to evaluate our library director. I have copies of it if you guys want them. Some of the big surprises to us, one of them's not a big surprise to us, is we don't have enough room. We've kind of outgrown our space. Every time we try and have projects, try and have programs, we have to limit the number of people that can come. We have some very popular programs like Zentangle, which is really fun, that we have to limit the number of people. We have to limit the number of kids at story time. The knitting club has gotten really huge. We don't have enough parking spaces. So that's actually was the biggest complaint, is we don't have enough parking spaces. 25% of the respondents said we needed more parking, and they are correct that we do. We had one complaint that was kind of interesting, that they wanted more political diversity in the collection. And the interesting thing is the librarian had purchased like very politically diverse, but because we don't have enough space, we have to weed the collection very frequently to make room for new books. So we kind of have if we get a new book, we have to take a book out, because this is something that's always been interesting to me, is there's literally not enough room in the library for the books that we own. If we got them all back, they wouldn't fit. But if we get a new book, we have to get rid of a book. So we get rid of the books that don't circulate. And some of the politically diverse books just don't circulate. So that was kind of interesting. But the biggest thing is parking. So for 2025, what we're looking at, a couple more things that happened is our library director had her 3rd son in September, and we got a new carpet, which is very pretty, very much nicer. Coming up for 2025, we're going to finish reviewing all of our policies. We do it regularly, but last year I think we did about half of them. We plan to finish the rest of them this year. We're going to continue to work on a plan for Upper Main Street for possibly expanding the library. Both the library director and I are on the stakeholders, go to the stakeholders meetings. And we're gonna continue working on more space. Like, we've been trying to work with Memorial Hall, but Memorial Hall has issues, and the Essex players use it a lot, so there's conflicts with use, so it's always hard to figure out if we can have a program or not. Like, you know, what do we do first? Do we book the program, or do we see if we have the space for the program? So we've been working on that. So do you guys have any questions for me?
Given that a lot of your funding comes from your closing of craft fair, I'm hoping it was successful this year for you.
It was. That's the Friends of the Library.
That's the Friends of the
That's the
Library.
Friends of the Library. It's a 501c3.
But how that impacts what you do, though, doesn't it, or not?
Yeah, we raise about, the Friends raise about $5,000 to $6,000 a year, and we use that money to pay for the summer reading program. We use that for some of the programs. We add to the budget, the programs budget that Caitlin has in your budget, so that we can have more programs. So we, for instance, paid for half of the Zentangle, for like 6 months of the Zentangle. We have been upgrading the gardens, but I believe the buildings are taking over the gardens because it's been done by a volunteer. Sally's been doing the gardens for years, and she's done an amazing, amazing job on the gardens. They're beautiful. That was one of our strategic plans, was to use the gardens more. And it was interesting to me that we wrote that as a goal, and they had already started doing it. They had already gone out and got a whole bunch of like lawn games and had a lawn game day this summer in our gardens. But so the gardens are being taken over by buildings. But we did do some upgrading of the gardens and added a bunch of plants, and then we had to get rid of some plants because they were creeping under the fence, and that wasn't fun.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
Other board questions?
I'm curious if you have any specific budget request that is particularly pressing?
More staff is always nice. This is the first time I can say, and like, that staffing personnel is okay right now, even with our director on maternity leave. It's like been the first time in the 20 years I've been a library trustee, that staffing is not a huge issue.
Oh, wow.
But it's always been a problem. If we get 2 people sick, then, you know, we've had to close. Because the board has a policy that we have to have 2 people in the library. And so if all of a sudden 2 people are sick and we can't get a sub, we can't have a sub in the building alone. So that's always been our policy. But I think the staffing would be my first thing. And Andy and I have been talking about this. The COVID caused us to increase our electronic, like books and videos usage, and then they're very expensive. And it's a constant like battle to keep that cost down because of the model that one of them uses. So that's something that's challenging. So Caitlin is always looking for other sources that we can use for ebooks and audiobooks.
Thank you.
Thank you for your hard work.
Thanks.
Thanks for the hard work and it start with you.
I just talk to her all the time.
Oh.
So I don't know. One thing I think you have talked about a lot is program space. I think
Yeah.
that would be a budget or potential budget. Thing
That's
would
you
be
know
helpful.
one of the things that one of the reasons we're so interested in the Upper Main Street is that we have to restrict. I mean, I'm one of the library trustees, and it took me like 5 months to be able to go to one of the Zentangle classes, but because we can only have 10 people in our little community room, and because of fire code and how big the spaces are, we just can't have big programs. They did have I think Tracy, you went to the sled dog, and that was in the garden, so they could have more people. But if that had been in the building, you wouldn't have fit. And and if they have the magician at the end of the summer reading program, they have to have it in Memorial Hall because it doesn't fit in the library anymore. So it's just too big. And in the summertime, we do programs with the Brownell. Like we'll do, a couple years ago, we did a planetarium, and it had to be in Memorial Hall because nobody had any space. But Memorial Hall, it's hard to get. If the players are using it, then you can't have it for months. And if it's hard to coordinate all of that.
So I did a capstone project about 4 years ago on the value add of libraries and communities.
Oh.
Prior to that point, I had never heard or understood what the Library of Things was.
Oh.
So random question for you.
Okay.
What do you find is the most interesting item in the Essex Free Library's Library of Things?
Oh.
Ukulele.
Not
What?
Don't ignore him.
Okay, I will. No, it's not the ukuleles. There's a knitting loom. There's a sewing machine. And we started with snowshoes, which I think, then the snowshoes are like almost always out in the wintertime. If there's snow on the ground, they're almost never in. We've always had jigsaw puzzles in the library. We now have a really good collection of games, board games. There's a telescope that goes out. Oh, the most interesting thing, it's the ghost finding kit. Like, I'm not joking. Somebody donated a ghost finding kit.
Don't tell
That's
me.
cool.
That's very, very neat.
I actually don't know everything that's in it, so I can't but that's probably the most interesting thing is the ghost finding kit.
Thank you. And I do want, Ethan, go ahead.
Oh, I have a question now. Is there any ghosts in the library?
I don't know that anybody's checked.
Or if anybody ever-
It's a really old building, so.
It's like an interesting outing. I do want to make sure that if there are any questions or public comment that we allow time for that. So if you're in the room, raise your hand. If you're online, you can raise your virtual hand. Okay, Janet, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for the hard work.
Don't wait up for me.
And next on our committee discussions, discussion with the Cemetery Commission. Welcome.
Welcome. Am I talking to this?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm Joe Teagarden. I'm the chair of the Essex Town Cemetery Commission. I've been out to the cemeteries for many hours and many days, and I've not seen any ghosts there either. I was really hoping, I tell you the truth, I really was hoping that something would happen, at the cemetery, one of the two, but not to date. So, anyway, you just want me to talk a little bit about the Cemetery Commission? Is that the idea? Okay. Well, what really our mission is simply to create a well-maintained setting for the internment of the deceased and also for the commemoration of the deceased, not to mention then a setting for to help the bereavement of people who visit the cemetery to see relatives or simply to visit the cemetery. We have lots of people who come there and walk their dogs. I'm not positive they have people, relatives in the cemetery, but there are people who come walk their dogs, come walk, ride their bikes through there. There's lots of activity in the cemetery that you might not expect. Anyway, so to that end, in order to make that mission come true, we have been working on in the past and will continue to work on this, the identification of military veterans' graves and trying to mark them properly with flag holders and flags. Since we started working on this project, we probably have located through research, Ancestry.com, all kinds of different documents, probably 75 more graves of, or so in both cemeteries combined of people who their graves were not marked properly. And we're still finding more and more. Every time we turn over a page of something, there's another person's name comes forward. It's not easy to find the status of these people. A lot of them, it's not listed in military records. Sometimes they're listed in old obituaries and things like that. So it takes a lot of time to go through that. So that's one thing we do. We also work with Park and Rec to make sure that the cemeteries are well maintained. You know, the grass cut, the stones repaired. It seems that there is 2 or 3 or 4 stones every year that fall over and have to be rebuilt or glued or whatever the situation might be to get them to stand again. We meet regularly throughout the year to conduct business that comes up, and there's all kinds of different questions that you might not think about. People sometimes want to know if they can put 2 cremations in a grave compared to 4, and where would they be? And one of the funniest ones that came up this year, I thought funny, perhaps it wasn't. I don't think anybody in the crowd. Hope it's not talking about them. But somebody wanted to turn in their columbarium compartment, if you will. If you don't know what the columbarium is, that's where people place ashes, urns. They put them away, and there was a question that came up was, could I take my urn out of the columbarium and then get a refund? And I thought, well, we give refunds to people who have graves, but I don't know that we exhume, caskets and things like that from a grave, and then who would go back in that grave? Anyway, it's all kind of funny, like trying to decide who was going to go back into the columbarium. If you took somebody out, who goes back in there? It's my sick sense of humor, I guess. Anyway. And then we also have a presence on all the community events, whether it's the town meeting day or Essex Experience. We're out there and have tables. This year we did a thing where we let young kids do rubbings on gravestones. Eric Bianchi gave us a gravestone or a stone with some engraving on it, and kids would come by and they had special paper and they could engrave or they could rub their special, or I guess it was, in this case, it was a tennis ball over the special paper, and they could walk away then with that engraving. So that was kind of cool. So for the next year, essentially, we're going to do mainly those kinds of things, but we're also going to reach out to the Historical Society and see if we can do something that we both together can do something to enhance the cemeteries themselves so more people know what's going on there. And you asked in part of your questions, I believe, about what we need from you, essentially. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we would like would be some feedback. We would like the select board to visit the cemeteries and give us feedback as to what you all think ought to be done or what direction that we ought to go to. Our group is relatively new So we haven't really got the long view of the cemeteries. It'd be nice to have some different ideas about what you all think. So, I'm up for questions if.
Do you have any budget requests for the new fiscal year? I know you expressed some concern about the availability of funds and you're not knowing what was available.
Well, we just met with Adrian Martin, this our last meeting, and we worked that out. We worked out the fund that we have, and we know the amount that's in that fund, and we know that it's dedicated to the Cemetery Commission now, and so we're happy with the amount that we have right now, and it's likely in FY26 that FY26 that there might be a change or a request depending on what the needs are. We have, in terms of requests, we always have concerns about the removal of trees and some of the really tall maple trees that are split, have fungus, etc. Who knows what's going to happen to them? And as you suspect, tree removal is pretty expensive. So anyway, there's stuff like that, but it hasn't happened yet. And but we have the last 2 or 3 years we have done a lot, or a lot of work's been done to make sure that the ground at MVC has more grass on it, less weeds, a lot greener. There's an old shed out there that's been painted recently, so it looks nicer. So again, our goal to try to make it look like a good place to be.
Thank you.
Any other board questions? Ethan?
I just had a quick question. When would be a good time to catch you over there in the cemetery?
Well, I don't have office hours over there, but if you gave me a call anytime, I'd be glad to go over and we can go through both cemeteries. It's a pretty cool walk through, especially the common burial ground. It's a pretty cool walk. There's some interesting graves from all eras of the military. Revolutionary War, Battle of 1812, Spanish-American War, Civil War, World War I, World War II, not in the common burial ground, but up through the Civil War in the common burial ground, then in MVC, mostly World War I, World War II, Korea, a lot of different graves. One of the, I'll just say, one of my favorite, I may have told you this last time I was here, I don't know, I can't remember anymore. But one of the first things I ran across when I was in the MVC, Mountain View Cemetery, was a grave that was marked with a flat stone, and it was of a soldier named Ray Fletcher. And Ray Fletcher, I saw his stone was overgrown, and I didn't know who the person was, so I did some research on him, and just discovered that he was a World War II flyer who his plane went down over Corsica, France, in World War II. His remains were not found until about 2010. They returned him. He was interred. Then around 2010 with his folks' grave lot. And I just thought that was a pretty compelling story for a person then to have a stone that was overgrown, you couldn't hardly see it. And so that kind of started our mission to clean up all the vets' graves. And it's a big job. It's a huge job to get everything cleaned up, and we have a long way to go. But we're on that task. Yeah.
Do you have volunteer days to go to do that kind of work?
We well, no, we don't have volunteer days. And we talked about volunteers, and we talked about the liability having volunteers out there, and we have to sort through that to figure out how we would even do that. But we haven't done that. No, not yet.
Yeah, because we do that in parks for the the trail cleanup and that sort of thing. So
yeah.
If you work that out, I'd love to come help. I think that's I'm kind of intrigued by that, and I'm also like the idea of getting a tour. So yeah, maybe they can be combined. Do the.
Well, I always thought it'd be cool to have some sort of a around this time of year, some sort of ghost walk over there.
And you take the ghost detector. Yeah.
Had I actually seen a ghost, I think we would have had it. But But there's lots of good stories, especially with the vets, different
Sure.
ways they served, and it'd be a pretty cool walk. Yeah.
Yeah, I just popped into my brain how the library does the story walk, having something like that in the
Yeah.
cemetery to tell the stories of the vets.
That's kind of what we were hoping would come of this effort, to meet with the Historical Society and see if we could come up with, something that would draw interest to the cemetery, but also be pretty interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I do want to open it up to public comment questions, if there are any, either online or in the room. Not seeing any in either place. So,
Okay.
Joe, thank you for being here. Thanks for all you do.
You're welcome.
And yeah, I'm sure that many of us are going to head over and take a peek.
Well, we've done in the past 3 years. It is much nicer at MVC now, in terms of the green grass and less weeds and more trimming and all that things getting done. And also then the military flag markers that keep the flags up off the ground, make it look a lot neater and cleaner when you walk through the grave. Right now, everything is getting kind of old and the flag's kind of shaky because we're getting into winter and the flag's been up for a long time. But when spring comes again and we replace all the flags, then it looks really cool on Memorial Day, which is where we kind of aim for, to have the flags in place. And I should say this. The last time I was here, Don told me to contact the VFW about flags and flag markers, and I did do that. And they did donate all the markers and all the flags. And they will continue to do that, I believe. At least I'm going to ask them.
Yep.
Glad to hear it.
And I became a member of the VFW just to kind of push them that. All right, thank you.
Right,
Thanks
thank
so
you.
much. Our next discussion is with the Police Community Advisory Board. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. And same thing, if you want to tell us a little bit about what you've been up to, if you have any questions, items of note, and then just more of a free-flowing discussion, ideas, questions.
So I'm Christina Hagestad, the chair of the PCAB, going forth as a infant 2-year-old committee. Very intimidating after hearing all those wonderful summaries of the other committees. Our first year, we started, I think, with 5 out of the 6 members, or maybe 6 out of the 6. Off the top of my head, I can't recall now. And then we lost 2 members off the committee, 1 almost instantly, and then 1 probably, I don't know, 6 months, 4 to 6 months in. And so it had been really tough, just applicant wise, members of the committee wise. I think that's one of the biggest things that's kind of on our mind, is membership. Like, we have 3 now original members, and then we gained a 4th member, I'd say maybe 4 or 5 months ago. I could be off because I missed a meeting here and there. So I think I'm just starting with my biggest plea is we need more members. And part of our struggle was when it was originally, the committee was originally, created, we were striving for equal representation of 3 town residents and 3 city residents. And I think I'm currently the only city resident still on, because the other 3 members are all town residents. And we're struggling because we continue to get applications, but they're from the town, and officially we're maxed out at our 3 town residents. And I think we've kind of been talking amongst ourselves, and I think I can make the jump as the chair to say, if there's a way that we could amend the original writing of the 3 and 3 representation to just be 6 from the city and the town, that it doesn't have to be split. Ironically, I was very like pro separation, and so I was a big proponent that I wanted equal representation, and I wanted the city to be, you know, we need to have, you know, equal number of members as the town. And now 2 years later, I'm just begging, we just need people, and I'm willing to take back all of my city strength to just say we just need people, because that goes back to the point that I was gonna start with before I realized I should just focus on what's most important first. Part of our struggle is outreach at events. We have 2 members that have kids and 1 member with some accessibility needs, and then we have myself, and we really struggle to make it to events. I don't know if anybody went to Halloween, the Maple Street park with the pumpkins. We're just struggling to make it to things, and so I talked to the city council last month or the month before, and they volunteered to help put out like our pamphlets and our info brochure at their booth or their table or whatever, because we are really trying to also remain separate, adjacent from the police department. We don't necessarily, and Chief Hogue agrees, like we don't want to have the PCAB paperwork on the police department's table, because that just defeats the whole purpose. We want people to talk to us because maybe we're the people that they trust, and if they have complaints, like they're not going to what they might think is like the problem or the bad guy or the whatever complaint that they might have or issue they want to talk about, they can come to us instead. So we're really trying to remain separate, but we're really struggling to get to events. So it had been falling on Chief Hogue to pass some stuff out. Now the city council said that they would help us, so we're gonna be in contact with them. But part of it is we just need the remaining 2 seats filled, because it's always that, you know, the people with kids are doing the things with their kids, and I might have had a prior commitment, or, you know, might not be inaccessible, or, you know, like worth the effort to make it. And that's really like our biggest kind of problem right now. We're doing really well in like all of our work plan items, where we took like the first year to kind of lay the foundation. We had to all learn all the things, like what does the police department do? How do you even run a committee? How do you make motions? You know, some of us had background knowledge, some had zero. They were like, what's a motion? How do we do these things? So we really were coming from like the ground up. And so I think it took about the first year, and then it was hard because we lost members and things like that. So we had to keep rebuilding. But we have had Gwendolyn, who's now the vice chair. She's been working on like our blog kind of posts. Currently it's on I think it's on the town website, or you can get to it, I think, from the city, but you go to like the PCAB page, and then you get like all the info and the agendas and stuff. And at the bottom we have like posts, and like she's done interviews with us. I'm trying to work with like the local newspapers and things. I had some issues with, when I took over as chair, getting the general PCAB emails to so I'm only seeing mine currently. I know how to solve that problem. So we're doing media outreach. We are brainstorming how to do more community outreach. We're really trying to stay separate and connected to the police department, so that's just a really fine line that we're doing really well with. It's always in like the forefront of our mind. We've gone through a lot of policies that Chief Hogue has brought to us. We've read through them. We've given feedback. We've sat in on lieutenant promotion interviews and things like that. The new community affairs liaison, Gwendolyn was able to sit in on those interviews as well. So we're trying to be a part of all the things. And our current big item that I think we want to probably have done by January, February, I don't know, is we're trying to put out an update to a survey that Essex Best had put out. They were sort of like the precursor equity kind of PCAB, which kind of morphed into us. They put out a survey to see the community's feelings about the police department and race and how just all of the things are being. We want to do an update to that. We have been brainstorming the original survey and how to update the questions. I'm pretty confident, I missed last meeting because I was sick, but I'm pretty confident that this next meeting we're probably going to continue brainstorming questions. We want to reword questions because the whole point of the survey is to get data, and we also want people to do the survey. So we don't want to just have a bunch of questions that aren't really getting us things, and then people aren't doing it, or they're doing it and they're like, this is so long, I'm just going to guess or whatever. Like, we want a survey that's efficient and gives us data so we could do things with the data. So that's our biggest kind of work plan item. Budget things, really the only thing we keep talking about is we need like merch. Like, we need, like, my idea is like, you know, the plastic thing, and you can put your like insurance card and your like registration, or I know Vermont doesn't, I don't know what they do anymore. Something that says like PCAB, like in case you like get pulled over. My thought is like, you get pulled over, they ask you for that stuff, you take it out and you're like, oh yeah, the PCAB, like I can tell them about what just happened. Like, I can talk to, like, to me it's a good visual reminder that if you get pulled over and you have to take it out, you can remember us and maybe you want to talk to us about what happened. Just like merch, things to give out so our name kind of gets familiar. Another reason why we need members is because we've reached the extent of our circles, and we all have our own types of circles that we can reach, but it's always helpful to have more people. So yeah, what I did is what we need, underline more members. That's really my number one issue that I'm bringing forth. And that's everything that I had.
Questions from the board?
I have a question for Greg first. Wasn't it a mutual decision that it would be 3 and 3, and that's what the city wanted?
That's part of the police shared services agreement.
So she would have to go back to the city to get more people, and if the town part's filled?
And I think the city's been advertising, I believe, right?
Yeah, and I remember when I went to the city council meeting, I had put applicant ? Because there was some discussion that we had an applicant. I don't know what the update was. It might have been talked about at the last PCAB meeting. But is there any way to amend that rule of the, like, 3 from the city and 3 from the town? Like, is there usually I'm told I have to talk to you because it's like a town committee type thing, so.
Right. I think the select board and the city council would have to agree to amend the police shared services agreement to allow for anybody from either community to be on the board.
So what would be my next step to get that in motion?
I'll take a quick straw poll. Anybody have any issues with that? Not a decision, but concerns up front?
No.
I don't. I did think that the wording is something around best effort.
Right.
Equal.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something.
Yeah.
That we can
I just want to know an action step. Is there something I need to do, or can I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we can take the discussion either town manager to city manager for at least to broach the subject.
Right.
Sure.
I think the city council it's taking their pulse as well as to if they'd be interested in that.
Okay, so then if you could just reach out to me or Chief Hogue or someone so we know what we have to do, because that's, I think, our biggest complaint.
So my other question is, do you have any plans on how to get the word out of who you are and what you're supposed to be doing?
Yes, so media outreach, Chief Hogue put me in contact with the Essex Reporter, somebody from there, to do an interview with them. We're trying to figure out how to promote our blog posts so that it's not just on the city website. We've been toying with if we want to use social media, if we just want to have like a separate web page. I forget who said it. Maybe it was, I could be wrong. Maybe it was Anthony Jackson Miller before, when he was a community affairs liaison. There was some discussion that's flickering in my brain about the website or the domain updating or something, that when there's like, there have been something like this, maybe it was the city, maybe it wasn't the town, but like they're upgrading different parts of the whole entire like page. And so when they get to like hours, that would be a good opportunity to like create like a semi-separate kind of page. That can be a reminder then for me to bring that back up.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I don't know. I guess I don't know the best way to ask this question, but
That's okay.
is there a running tally roughly on how many members of the community have reached out and the PCAB has helped?
So we had, so our first year was kind of the foundational year. We did have one member of the public come to speak to us, and this person had been speaking to all of the like PCAB type groups to voice concerns about police interactions that personally affected somebody close to them. And so they just wanted to share their story with everybody. We had a few people reaching out to Jody, who worked for Essex Best, who is our advisor for the PCAB, and they reached out to her because they knew of her work with Essex Best, and they had some neutral to negative interactions with the police department, so they wanted to remain anonymous, so she got permission to share their story with us. And I think we might have gotten some emails when I wasn't the chair, so I don't know off the top of my head. But that's kind of our survey is our important work plan item, and having people know about us, but also knowing that we're not just going to like share their identity and rat them out, that like, oh, you're complaining about XYZ person, like I'm going to go tell them. So yeah, it's just been tough to figure out. So that's why we're kind of moving slowly, so we don't trip over our own feet and then like ruin our hard work. So we've had some people come to us. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have you put in a budget request for the MERC as you?
Not yet. So far we've only done paper brochures. That's a topic that consistently comes up, is we have all these ideas, we never nail down an idea because we always seem to talk about like the survey, or we had people come in and like street outreach from Howard Center, or lieutenants talking about use of force. And so like our time has been, we always put the least amount of time to that type of thing, and then we're always like, okay, next meeting, and then we always struggle getting back to it. So we don't have any official quotes or requests or anything at the moment.
I'm totally impressed with almost everything you've said. I mean,
Thank you.
and I really want to make sure that we support you and don't get in your way. And if there's anything that you need, please ask for it.
Thank you. It's been, I mean, I never really did any committee anything. And when I moved to Vermont 5 years ago, I was like, okay, I can use my voice. I clearly, like, I'm social. I can join something. And I was waiting for a good opportunity, because nothing called to me, and then this called to me. So then I joined, and then we had a vote, and I was vice chair. And then the chair, after his year term, decided to join another committee. And then everybody was like, oh, Christina, like, you should be the chair. And I was like, is this where we're going with this? And it is. So there's a lot of pressure, especially after hearing the other committees and groups before me. I feel like, should I have had more? But I mean,
it's still a lot.
I don't think you missed
hard.
anything.
Right.
Yeah, nothing lacking there.
Yeah, I'm just emphasizing that for anyone listening too. It's so hard, literally starting something where like, I'm like saying, you know, calling the meeting to order, and I'm like trying to follow Robert's Rules of Order, and I'm like crying inside because I'm like, oh God, am I the only one who knows? Like, oh, I need to teach. It's fun and hard at the same time.
I feel your pain.
What?
You're doing
I
great.
feel your pain.
You are
Yeah.
doing great.
Thank you.
Agreed. I do want to leave space in case anyone from the public has comment, questions, input. And I see none. So Christina, thank you.
Thank you.
For everything you and the committee has done and continue to do, and let us know what you need.
Thank you. And I look forward to hearing back about anything that I can do to help possibly reword our committee member clause just so we can get some members.
Yeah, we'll be in touch one way or another.
Awesome. Is this for me or not for me?
Not, I don't think it's for you. I think that's for EDC.
Perfect. Have a good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So next up, right on cue, Economic Development Commission.
Hi everyone, Rebecca Robinson here. I'm the chair of the EDC, and we also have Ken in the room, who is the vice chair for the EDC. So just to give a quick update, we have 5 seats on our commission. We have 3 of us who have been around, 2 of us who our terms are ending in June, and we have 2 new members as of November, which we're very excited about. So thanks for all of your support in helping us there. To give a few quick highlights, we have our business outreach program where we've been reaching out to local businesses, meeting with them 1 time a month. We've met with over 6 businesses this year. It's been really awesome because we've been able to meet with them, engage with them, discuss opportunities and ideas they have for improving what it's like to be a business in Essex. And actually, a lot of these discussions and connections with the businesses have actually evolved in some of the resolutions that we've brought to other committees or commissions. So one example is we brought a resolution to update Essex zoning regulations for childcare. 2 regulations that we brought were updating language to be compliant, as well as certain zoning for considerations. We're still trying to work through some of those resolutions that we've brought for updates. We've also supported with letters of support for a lot of different initiatives. Some of the big ones have been the NBRC funds. We've worked to support the VORAC grant applications for some of the bike trails. We, in a different program, have been working on how do we engage as an EDC with the Explore Essex program. So Nick on our commission helped pull together a number of different businesses. We have lots of learnings too for how we continue to go through that program and make sure that there is representation and support from the EDC. One of our really big pieces that has been awesome, and if Greg and Catherine are in the room there, they've been great partners on our economic development study that is in progress. We're looking for responses and proposals to the RFP in November and December with the goal to have all of the reports and deliverables by May. One of the really big objectives of the economic development study is to understand what's the current economic status within Essex. How do we make sure that we understand what the data and insights are for how we evolve our goals and strategies, which ultimately will get us to what we need to do to drive sustainable growth for our community. This is something that we're super excited about because what we did is we took a lot of the different key areas from the town plan to ask questions that are related to economic development. So some of the key areas that we focused on are housing, economic development with businesses, conservation, climate and agriculture, infrastructure, as well as recreation. So the goal ultimately being that we get to take all of these insights and data, building off a lot of great reports that have been done in the past to make sure that we're continuing to build a community that's connected, diverse, inclusive, sustainable, in a place where people want to live and have a business within. Some of the other key areas that we've been working on is town signage for welcome signs. So we have gotten the budget approved. We've double checked and we still have that budget. So we're working on a project team. This is one of the things that we've discussed of now that we have some of our key boundary areas where there aren't necessarily signs as you come into the town of Essex. How do we make sure that we drive that to make sure people know when and how they're coming into our town, as well as having an opportunity to highlight businesses and organizations. And then last but not least, there's a few other key areas that we've been driving So temporary signage has been dug into by one of the EDC members. We've participated in town meeting day. We've been looking into food truck ordinance reviews. And then really working through and connecting with town staff and GBIC on where there are grants, programs, or other areas that we can use to, drive communication and support our businesses in our community. So I'm sure I'm missing a few things, but I just wanted to give you some of the highlights. I think one of our key areas where we're looking for your support is, as there's two of us whose terms are up in June, we'll need some support in recruiting as we go into like Q1 to get that started for that process. And other than that, there's not much more. I think we've been really trying hard this year to get more engaged in the community and across different committees and commissions in order to really, bring more to the community, as well as bringing more actionable resolutions. So would love to, if Ken would like to add anything, or if you have any questions, would be happy to answer them.
Giving you a thumbs up. Questions from the board?
Why do you meet so early in the morning?
It's a great question. So we had met at 8 a.m. because it worked for most people between being working professionals, as well as there's a lot of people who on our commission had families as well. So it was one of the things that we did in order to work the best for everyone. We actually are in discussion on if that continues to work, especially with new members, or if we need to adjust the time.
So, and when you do these site visits, do you all attend?
We do. We do a mix of hybrid everywhere, which has been actually phenomenal to keep it hybrid. So either we have everybody in person, but most of the time we have at least half of us on Zoom and half of us in person.
Thank you.
Other questions? I can see you're formulating one.
No, my shoulder's falling apart.
Looked like a question.
I was just gonna ask, you have like a welcome packet that you give to new businesses that come into town? I just wondered.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there is a welcome packet that Jean has been working on. And so it's something that we'll have to add to be able to give you a full update, because I'm not sure exactly where the initiative is.
Thank you.
I'm good.
You're good?
Mm-hmm.
You're good? Okay, with that, I will turn it over to public comment question, in case anyone has any questions about the EDC. Seeing none. Rebecca, thank you. Keep up the good work and let us know if there's anything that we can do to assist.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And skipping over Board of Civil Authority, we took that off the agenda. Consider approval of winter operations plan for 2024-2025. Hello again.
Hello. So the issue before you tonight is whether the Select Board will consider approval of the winter operations plan for the 24-25 season, and sign the attached policy that we execute every year. This plan has been coming to you. My predecessor, Mr. Lutz, started this over 35 years ago, and it continues on. We think it's a benefit to both our operations as a whole at Public Works, but also to the public, to keep them in the loop on this, and it provides you a tool as well to address or answer any concerns from the public. As in the past, we have two versions. We've posted and given you copies of the external version, which doesn't have any of our phone numbers. A lot of them are private, and we really don't want to get calls from the general public at large. There's really been no major changes to this year's plan. pretty much remains the same, except for some increase in the addition of some sidewalk plowing. We've had some folks from the Pinewood development come here last year around the same time and requested that we add additional sidewalk clearing operations. So we did. We added about, it basically accounts for about 3/4 of a mile of paved path on Stonebrook Circle and Evergreen Drive, which brings our total up to just a little bit over 18 miles of sidewalk and walkways paved, or plowed, excuse me, in the town of Essex, which is about 1/3 of our pedestrian infrastructure. Additionally, we're going to continue to use the public alert status that we adopted during the pandemic. If you guys remember, it was red, green, yellow, kind of stoplight. Everything is great, it's green on the banner. If we're behind or having difficulties due to various equipment failures or whatever, we'll flash red. It's a good way to provide what we're going through and then what's going to get maintained during the winter, and it kind of gives the public better expectations of what they're going to expect from us. And it does, and it has cut down a lot of the calls we do get at the office, complaints. They just go to the website, take a look. Questions are addressed and answered. We still get a number of mailbox complaints at times, especially the first few weeks of plow season, but we're going to keep that under control this year, as Mr. Robert has told me, right?
Yes, sir.
A copy of this external version of the op plan has been placed on our website for public comment. As of today, we have not received any requests for additional plowing or maintenance of any more sidewalks. So at this point, again, we attached a winter policy resolution. This is something like it kind of gives us and it gives the board the input into this plan for us. It's a document that's been associated with the winter ops plan for many years now, and it's something kind of makes this document yours as well, not just Public Works. So at this point, it's recommended that the Select Board consider approving this year's winter ops plan and execute and sign the attached policy resolution.
Questions, comments, discussion on the board?
So no increase in the Sand Hill, Allen Martin area then as far as sidewalk plowing?
No.
And any increase in the mailbox replacement?
We're at $75 per mailbox right now, which you probably know better than I do, purchasing a standard mailbox.
Does that cover most of the repairs?
For the installs we make, yeah.
Okay. That's all mine.
That was my question too. I was like, I'm pretty sure you can't buy a 4x4 in a mailbox for $75 anymore, but that was the only thing I read in there that jumped out at me.
And I think that was increased
Last,
previously $50.
It was $50 for a long time, and
PT's gone down a little bit, so that helps. 4x4 was like $40 at one point. Now they're back to 16 again.
Yeah.
So.
So my comment, I have really no problem with the policy resolution or the winter operations plan as it's set, except that no policy is neutral. And I'm going to talk about sidewalks for just 2 minutes here. That this plan is very car-centered, and Essex is failing the residents that rely on clear pedestrian infrastructure. And the most vulnerable of our residents are impacted. And we're basically, the town is telling them to let them eat cake. We're not going to clean your sidewalks. We're a part of the complete street models. Essex participates in that, and a complete street involves your sidewalks. The lack of snow removal obstructs that commitment that we've made to the Complete Streets program. And it is a remarkable inequity that when you don't clear the sidewalks, it impacts the quality of the life, and it's an equity issue. So I just wanted to put that up. And I will note that Williston has stepped up, and they are now going to plow all of their sidewalks. And Burlington is actually noted nationally for the policies they have for clearing all of their sidewalks for the people. So it's hard to find a spot to take this soapbox, but I think it's important that the board considers this going forward. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kendall.
Only question I have is you mentioned the number of miles of sidewalk that we plow. Does that include when there's sidewalks on both sides of the street, we're only plowing one? Because you said we do about a third of them. I'm just wondering, is it a third of the mileage, or is it a third of the streets that have
Third
sidewalk?
of the mileage.
So some of those streets have, it's actually a higher percentage if you count one side of the street versus if you subtract out all the.
Could be, yeah. I
Okay.
see the math, yeah.
Okay.
But we don't address all of our walks.
Right. And this plan is based on the budget that was approved in March, and so.
Correct. Yes.
So is there, and I don't want to wade into a budget discussion because we're going to have plenty of those coming up.
Yes. Next week.
Do we know what it would take to plow all of the sidewalks and in areas where there is a sidewalk on both sides of the street, one sidewalk on streets that do have two sidewalks?
And Dan can expand on this as well. Right now, we have a hard enough time filling all of our trucks, let alone filling the sidewalk plows. To do all of the sidewalks, we would likely have to put on an additional sidewalk plow, so 3 total, and then keep them running. And that takes bodies, which was it last week? We just put another ad for another highway tech to come on board to give us some more depth on the bench this coming into this season. But unfortunately, it comes down to having the bodies to put into the machinery.
And I'm sure that we'll be expanding on that conversation in the coming weeks and months. Other board questions, or are we all set?
All set. I make the motion that the select.
Yep,
Oops, sorry.
I was gonna just turn it over to, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Any public comment on the winter operations plan? Seeing none. Dawn, back to you.
I make the motion that the select board approve the winter operations plan for 2024-2025 and sign the attached resolution.
Thank you, Dawn. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Andy. Final discussion?
Would you like me to read the resolution?
Sure.
Gonna make me find that again.
Well, I got it right here. I can read
Here,
it if you want.
it's right here. You got it?
Be it resolved that the Select Board of the Town of Essex adopt the following statements of policy regarding winter snow and ice clearing operations. 1. Notwithstanding the circumstances involved with changing climatic conditions, the town will endeavor to keep town roads, designated walkways, and municipal parking lots in a reasonably safe condition for travelers, and town employees will endeavor to exercise reasonable care and diligence in the performance of their duties, consistent with the intent of the current Town of Essex Public Works Winter Operations Plan, and travelers who use the town roads, designated walkways, and municipal parking lots are expected to demonstrate due care and reasonable caution, especially under adverse winter conditions, executed at Essex Junction this 4th of November 2024.
Thank you, Ethan. And with that, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay?
Nay?
Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you for your hard work.
next on our agenda are the proposed charter change, potential action to warn public hearings on proposed charter changes. Hi, Tammy.
Hello.
So we did hear back from the town attorney on many of these. Tammy, do you have anything you'd like to add, present, review?
I do.
Dive in?
Yep. Tammy's mistakes. That's what I have to present. One of the, I guess what I would just say is that this would be a presentation of information and also the attorney's comments. And if there is to be any warnings, that probably would have to be decided tonight so that we have the timing in place to be able to warn, to follow the timeline. So you have the attorney comments. My only piece is that on the annual report changes, I made an error in what I provided to you, which was, and if you're looking at that, that would be, so it's section 602. Essentially, I reworded this so that we're not in the 30-day span. We don't have conflicts with that. So essentially, following the statute is the auditor's report. That's the only piece that would have to stick out for 30 days. And the annual report with the town meeting warning can still follow the 10-day prior to annual meeting piece. And in my draft that I provided to you, I left the words "and the warning for the annual meeting" in that first paragraph, and that should come out. So that is the only change, and I hope you follow along with what I'm trying to say here. So it would read, Section 602A would say, the town select board shall employ by contract a public accountant to examine the financial statements of the funds of the town. The annual auditor's report shall be made available to the voters of the town not later than 30 days prior to the annual meeting. Notification of the availability of the annual auditor's report shall be distributed by postcard to all Essex households at least 30 days prior to the annual meeting. So that's my one change in the documents that I sent to you. So unless you have other questions, I can address that.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry if I misunderstood you.
No.
State statute says that you have to notify them of the availability, not of the actual report.
Right.
So
the auditor's report.
The auditor's report.
Right.
Okay, not to be confused with the
annual report.
Annual report.
Correct.
Is that in a different section, or am I?
I did put it right below it.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, okay.
Yep. So that stays essentially the same. It's the only thing that we really changed there is that instead of saying it must be just instead of saying it has to be distributed, the annual report has to be distributed, we're saying it has to be made available. So really what you could do, or what we could do for the town, is we could put one postcard out 30 days ahead that says the audit report is available at the town office. You can pick it up. It's online. It's here, there. You can request a copy, we'll mail, whatever. And the annual report will be out on, and then you insert a date that's going to be up to the 10 days prior to annual meeting. So we can kind of like notify people of both in one postcard. I think that's still very doable. And then it doesn't conflict with the 30 days and the annual warning and all of those sorts of things. We still would have the time to do the annual warning like you normally would. So.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I was gonna say, if you did that, would you have an idea how many town reports you would need to print to have available?
I think I do have a pretty good idea, just because when I worked at the village, that's what they did. So I think we printed like 100 reports, and we still had some left over.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and we used to bring them to town meeting too.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we could, bump that up to a safer number, like say we wanted, I mean, honestly, even 500 reports is less than, 5,000. So say you get a number and then you bring it to your town meeting, make it available throughout the year, and you want to make sure you have enough. You could estimate in another year that, okay, we're just overspending on that, and you could cut that back. But
To follow up on that, you would have the opportunity where if you had to print more, you could, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yep.
That's what there is 5,000 households in Essex.
I think that's what we were, I think that's the number somewhere in there.
Roughly.
Yep. Yep. And I did get a number for the postcards, because I know that was asked at the last meeting. So annual reports. Oh, I think I already told you about the postcards, didn't I? This is what I wanted to dig out. So when printing with the village, we ordered 100 copies. So this answers your question, for distribution at a cost of less than $1,000, and then mailed, in addition to that, 5,000 trifold newsletters. So they didn't do a postcard. They did it was a large piece of paper that folded into, and so you really could get a lot of information in there, and that cost $2,600. So it's still cheaper, even if whether you go postcard or you could do a trifold that has the meeting warning. It could even have pieces of the audit in there. It could have your what's on the ballot. You could have something from your chair. I mean, so there's a lot of things you could put into something like that and still have a cost savings, and it could go to every household.
All right, so, yeah, Andy, go ahead.
I'm sorry, you just said that you could have a trifold thing with a lot of information in it, but like what the articles were that could be voted on and all that 30 days ahead of the meeting?
No, that would have to be something. Oh yeah, you're right. That would have to be. No, you still could put a lot of information in there. You probably wouldn't have the warning though, would you? No.
So we are removing the requirement. Are we removing the requirement? We're removing a mention of any requirement surrounding providing the warning.
Correct.
So then we would default to statute on what
right.
I don't know what the statute says
10
on
days.
It is 10 days. Okay.
Yeah.
So our our current charter is consistent with okay. So just removing it just sets us back to 10 days. So do we have to send something, a second postcard out with the
Well,
warning
I
on it?
mean, here I was just talking about this trifold thing, and if you put the warning in there, then that would end up being a second thing. So, I mean, I wouldn't recommend that. If you're going to do the postcard and put a date, or put a trifold in and just don't have your warning in there. You could still do a published version of your warning in your newspaper.
Right.
And that meets those requirements
Okay,
as
so
well.
there's no need to physically send something to every household with the warning for a town meeting.
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you for stepping through all that.
This is a lot. I think by wording it this way, we can talk about what's the best way to do that outreach. And I guess honestly, I haven't thoroughly, thought that out yet. Obviously, but I think making it just slightly less restrictive, that saying it doesn't have to be distributed, this at least brings it back, and we could talk about it and say, this is what we want to pay for, this is what we're going to budget for this year, and this is how we can do it.
So as soon as the audit report is available, we could send that postcard out.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait until 30 days before.
Right. Correct.
Right.
Yeah, we can let people know it's available.
Right. Because I've been, on years when the town meeting is on March 1st, there's only 28 days between that and the last Monday, and
yeah, it's tight.
Yeah. Okay.
So thinking about scalability, if we were in a situation where we wanted to notify the auditor's report and do the trifold for kind of like a town report light version.
Yeah.
If we send that by trifold, are we not meeting the letter of shall be distributed by postcard?
That's a good point.
Because I'm wondering if that should read shall be distributed to all Essex households to give us
a
little
some
wiggle
flexibility
room.
there. Yeah. In case you wanted to send something more. I mean, you really be going above and beyond postcard, but, yeah, If you wanted to make that a little less restrictive, then that would, you know.
Yeah, I just don't want to restrict future boards to
Right.
kind of being creative and
Yeah. I mean, you
do
could
that.
even just, even if it, you could even do a piece of paper, fold it in three, and you get more information on this, you know? I mean, it could be a year when you have something else that you want to put in there that you can't fit on a postcard. So that's a really good point. You know, that could be,
Could say by mail.
yep,
It shall be distributed
by mail.
Maybe not even mail. Just I like yours better because who knows what's going to be, you know, in the
Don't
future.
wish away the post office.
There may not be a post
nobody's wishing away the
Just
post
saying.
office.
But my question was gonna be, for you, how do you plan to, make it known that the town report is gonna be available at least 10 days before, when you're sending this out, within 30 days prior, not later than 30 days. So really, let's just say 40 days you're planning on sending this out, and we are tied up in the budget and we haven't made a decision. We're holding a special meeting and we're 11 days before,
Yeah.
12 days before.
30 days, we've got it pretty much done, I think, at that point, because you're 30 days before, you're talking about February 5th, and usually we have that warning done by the last, it's usually a week before that. It's really tight, but it's usually by the end of January. So your budget and your warning is probably going to be done. What we wouldn't, and might not have time to do is get that approved warning in a, you know, you'd be cutting it close for your that 30-day mark. But I think your budget's going to be done. I've not seen it go past January since I've been here.
Yeah,
But
if you go past the end of January, you can't have town meeting.
right, you're off your
You
schedule.
have to delay town meeting.
Yep.
You'd
We've
have to,
actually had
'cause you-
special meetings,
So
I
the
think.
public hearings are
Yeah.
over by then.
Right.
You have to
Get it
you
done
have to
before
warn
the-
it at the end of
yes, yeah.
January, or
30
you
and
can't
40
have
days
public. You
before.
can't have town meeting.
Yep.
Okay. I just want to make sure that that wouldn't be an issue if you,
Mm.
because if you send that out 40 days before and you say the annual report will be available on, I don't know what the date is, but I'm just going to say February 10th, you know, would that be okay? I don't plan that, right? That's,
Right. I
Yeah.
think
I'm just
it's
asking.
it's a matter of, yeah, and that's a good question. It's a matter a lot of times of like figuring out how much you're mailing, how long it takes to mail it, how long it takes to print it, how long, you know. So typically I've got all of the things I need for the town report by January 31st. I've got it all because we have to have it all done. Now I've got the audit, I've got the warning, I got all the things. Now I've got to assemble it, put it all together in an annual report, get it to the printer, and then they have mailing time.
Okay.
So, but that's going to change a little bit if we're not doing, you know, 5,000 or 6,000 copies of this. So I have to think about
You have to at least print one because I'm requesting mine.
Yes, I think we definitely, and we also have to. We do. It has. There is a. We have to have printed copies that have to go to the Secretary of State. There's a statute on that. The clerk has copies here. We've always brought them to town meeting and probably voting. Like, I mean, we'll try to have those available at all
Well,
of our functions.
If you
all
do
of
an
the-
information night, that's when, yeah.
Yes. Yep. We can have that available. We can put them here. I mean, all of the places we normally would, we would still have them available for people. In the lobby.
So in the interests of just organizing conversation, any decisions that are to be made, we've been talking about number 06
Right.
for the annual reports. Do we want to just take these number by number and talk about them, decide on them independently?
Yeah, I might request that we go from 1 to.
Yep, that works.
Yeah.
That works.
I just kept the numbers so that they would tie to the October 21st meeting, but yeah, the numbers would be assigned article numbers for a ballot.
Greg, would it be simpler to have one motion, or are you good with doing this one by one?
I would say one by one, just in case you decide to put some forward and some not.
Okay.
But Andy has his hand up too.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if in case one of us wants to vote against a particular one.
Okay. Is anybody interested in making a motion on the 06.
Make
I don't think mine was gonna. Okay, go ahead.
I'm gonna wing this. I make the motion that the town of Essex Select Board direct staff to prepare the proposed article for section 602 annual reports for a charter change
For a public hearing?
for a public hearing.
Yep, just a note, this does remove 603 as well. So I think if we just refer to 06
06.
from our packet.
06.
And did you want that to include the removal of and the warning for the annual meeting?
Just as corrected.
Yeah,
As-
yes. And to change it from postcard to best fit language.
Distributed to all residents.
Okay. You,
Is that good?
Warn 2 public hearings, December 16th and January 6th.
Yes.
yes? Okay. So
Can I-
there's, yeah.
Can I repeat that motion just to make sure?
Can I try
Is
my
it- is
motion
it
first,
written
and it might
anyway?
make it easier?
Okay.
Do have to make one comment. We do have to say how we're distributing it.
Oh, we do.
We do. Yep, so we would have to say by mail.
Okay.
But that, the statute requires us to say, to identify how it's distributed. I think you could say
Okay.
by mail would be sufficient.
Okay, good to know.
I may.
do you wanna-
Well, let me just try this one, and then, because then we can discuss them, and then, as they've been corrected by Tammy. So wait a minute. So make the motion to select board proceed with the corrected charter amendments as proposed by the Charter Review Committee, corrected by the town's attorney, reviewed by the town's select board and a representative from, I didn't finish my writing. Tammy, anyway, and to post, to hear 2 public hearings and to post the warning to the town meeting ballot. That way it opens your discussion to all of these.
Okay, which means we would need to vote on all of them.
Well, hopefully by now you know which ones you're going to support and not. I don't know. It opens it up to discussion, basically. So instead of,
Okay, is there a second for voting on warning all of them?
I'll second for discussion, but I'm gonna have to vote it down because I don't want to.
no, it was just for the purpose of open discussions.
But you know what I mean?
I'd rather vote on each of them individually too, because I'm going to vote no if.
Yeah. Same.
I think so.
I have some that I'd like to approve tonight, but there's.
Yeah, and I have some concern about if we vote down this one for the entirety. I mean, we could make a subsequent motion, but it makes it a little squishy.
Okay. Whatever.
Ethan, if you want to withdraw your second.
Withdrawn.
Okay. So without a second, that motion dies. So did you want to remake your motion, Ethan?
Yeah, but can we, let me get the date here.
Yep.
I don't, in the memo, there's
No, I'm going.
November 4th is to approve. So the first public hearing will be December 16th and the second one on January 6th. That's correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I make the motion that the town of Essex Select Board approve the changes to 06 draft amendment and to warn a public hearing, 2 public hearings on December 16th, 2024 and January 6th, 2024.
2025.
2025. That's the next year.
Okay. And does your motion include any of the,
Any changes to the verbiage regarding removal of the annual meeting and the word postcard?
substitute it with mail?
Substitute by mail.
Okay. Are you good with that?
I understand it.
Does everyone understand what the motion is?
Yeah, and I misspoke by saying annual meeting. I meant annual report.
We're waiting for a second.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Andy. Do you have discussion?
I just want to follow up on this comment that Tammy made about having to identify how we're distributing for the B section there, where it says the town report will be made available. Do we need to identify how
We do
there?
not.
Oh, it's because we're distributing something, we have to say how we're distributing, but this,
No.
we're just saying it's available, right?
It's just because it's the auditor's report. There is no requirement by
Okay.
law to even do an annual report.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a, yeah, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any follow-up questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to turn it over to members of the public if they have comment or input on the 06 proposal for annual town reports and removing 603, which is the town meeting warning and budget, essentially consolidating the two. I don't see any comments online. Any hands raised? I don't see any hands raised in the room. So bring it back to the board. All those in favor of warning the two public hearings for the 06 charter proposal with those changes that's listed in our packet, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0.
There's one.
Is there another one where someone really wants to go next, or should we just go right to 4?
Is there any objection to the assessors article?
Yeah. That was gonna be my next one, was 7.
Okay, let's head on over to 7. If I can find it. Questions, comments, discussion?
Motion. Public comment.
Is there any public comment on the change to the Department of Real Estate appraisal, subchapter 10, to changing it as indicated in the packet? Seeing none online, don't see any hands in the room. Ethan?
Make the motion that the Town of Essex Select Board approve 07 draft amendment to subchapter 10 real estate appraisal to warn 2 public hearings, the first being on December 16th and the second on January 6th, as presented tonight.
Thank you, Ethan. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Andy. Any final discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. 4, 5, or 8. Seeing none, I'm going to 4.
Which one's for?
4 is the organization.
Organization.
So I would comment on this one, just that I think the last meeting, this wasn't necessarily one that anybody was stuck on carrying it forward, but I didn't have an answer for the question as to why the attorney was suggesting that we separate it out. So that I asked the question and got the answer. So I don't know if that's still anything that you want to do. The attorneys essentially said in the comments that they were fine with it either way, whether you leave it the way it is or if you wanted to separate it out. I think they mentioned the rationale behind making it into its own section was to clean up the language and make the section clearer. And then again, it came back to that word incapacity as it is defined does not apply to the town moderator. So that's why they were doing that. So.
Discussion, questions, general thoughts.
Is the word in there still? I'm having a hard time putting my eyes on it.
Incapacity?
Oh, it's right there.
It is. It's in C. Yep.
Okay.
Which they didn't have a problem using that word. We had some attorneys tell us that they did. They said, well, you shouldn't use it. And then we had our town attorney said, no, you can use it, but you should separate that out. You should take the town moderator piece out because it doesn't apply. So that's why there's that separated piece down there.
So
Andy?
the incapacity clause only applies to the select board in this proposal, right?
Let me reread what the attorney said just before I answer that, but the original version had the difference that incapacity as it is defined does not apply to the town moderator. You'll just want to make sure that it is clear in the revised version. Okay, so I think they're saying in the original one, it's saying that it doesn't apply, and in this, they're making it so that it does. So I guess that's kind of opposite what I just said.
But I don't see incapacity in the moderator's section.
Mm.
The question that I had was going to be that it says incapacity shall include. So I don't believe that incapacity has been given any more definition when it says to add to the word. It says change of residence outside of the town to add to how the word incapacity may be defined, but that isn't in that section anymore. So there's no defining in that in subsection C1. Incapacity shall include the failure by any member of the select board to attend at least 50% of the meetings of the select board in any calendar year. Well, the first part of that sentence, incapacity shall include, to me reads it also is one of the criteria.
Mm-hmm.
What is the rest of the criteria?
Right above in C.
Right, but it still says it doesn't use the word incapacity there.
Yeah.
C does.
The
C?
Second line.
C, so,
Reservation, change
Yeah.
of
Or
residence.
incapacity.
yeah.
So
Essentially, they're providing a more robust,
Explanation.
language to explain, like they're defining, they're bringing more definition to incapacity, which was what the question was, and we asked them to do. And so that's what they did.
Yeah, but I'm just having a really hard time with or incapacity. Because or means not and. It means or. So you've given definition to reasons why a member can be removed from the select board, but you've also left it open as or incapacity of any select board member. And then down below it says incapacity shall include. So there's still no definition for incapacity
in statute, there is.
in statute.
It includes insanity, was death, insanity, I forget what the other one.
Remove, isn't it moving?
Oh, yeah, removed
Yeah.
from the town. It is their incapacity is defined in statute. It's not, they don't say this is what incapacity means, but the criteria that we use to just judge whether or not a select board member was incapacitated is defined in statute.
Right. And I think that Bill's comments on this is that he's good with this, whether you're going to do these changes or not, is because there is statute to say all of these things. It's just in how you want to have it worded in here.
What if you put and or incapacity? Does that make you happy?
I don't know about any sort of happiness, but I just have a hard time reading it.
No, I'm just saying, so if you said in the event of death, resignation, change of residence outside of the town, and or incapacity of any select board member, does that make it flow better for, I mean,
Yeah, I was just asking the question.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so for this purpose, incapacity is defined as failure by any member of the select board to attend at least 50% of the meetings of the select board.
Right.
However,
That's an additional criteria to the statutorily
right, what I was
defined
saying, however,
reasons.
in
Yeah.
statute, there is a slightly different definition, which also includes some of the things that are listed in C. So technically, they're both statutes. I don't think they're in conflict. However, it does raise at least a little bit of confusion. Andy?
Last time we talked about this, I was in favor of not moving forward with this, partly because we don't have a floor vote anymore at town meeting, and the moderator's role is less is diminished from at least in my feel from where it was, and putting a lot of effort into changing this and trying to explain it to people isn't worth all the effort, and so I'm not in favor of moving forward with this change.
So subsection C1 is one. That's always been there.
That's in our current.
That's in the current.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
It's part of the paragraph. It's not separated out as a number one.
Are there any additional questions or thoughts from the board?
So what if you ever go back to needing a town moderator and you've taken that all out?
The town moderator, if this wouldn't move forward, the town moderator is still in the current version. It's just not separated out into its own section. So we would still have a moderator.
And you also still have statute, but
Right.
tells you.
Yep. So hearing a lull on the board, I'm going to go over to public comment. If anyone from the public has input on the organization, this is number 4 in the packet for the charter change proposals. And I do not see any online or in the room, so we'll bring it back to the board.
Well, it says the town attorney recommended that be separated out.
But then he also said that it's okay to leave it the way it is.
Right. I asked him why. He was making the recommendation, and so his comment was, he said there is no issue with combining the town moderator into one paragraph with the select board. The rationale behind making it into its own section was to clean up the language and make the section clearer. If you would like to combine it back into one, which wouldn't be, it'd just be like leaving it alone, essentially, there is no issue with that.
Ethan?
Yeah, I skipped over the part that I was reading last night and had a problem with, but in the last sentence of C, in the event the select board is unable to agree upon an interim replacement until the next annual or special meeting, a special election shall be held forthwith to fill the position.
Mm-hmm.
That's not new. That's already in there.
I know, it's
yeah.
been moved though, right?
It's just been moved, yeah.
So, but my question is, okay, but that didn't have anything to do with the moderator? The moderator just got moved in the position of that?
Yeah.
Because my
Put it all
question there was,
together.
there's never been any requirements for how many times you get to try and appoint somebody, or how close the election possibly could be. You know, if that happened 3 weeks before, are you, and you have a select board meeting, are you, I'm not saying 3 weeks, let's just say 6 weeks, but
So
Is there
what we could
criteria
do
there?
as a select board, if, say, I resigned a month before the election, the select board could opt to appoint, but since there is an ongoing election and an upcoming meeting, my interpretation is the select board would probably not appoint and just, leave it up to the voters. However, that may change based on whether anyone is running. So it just gives that leeway to appoint, to not appoint.
It also gives somebody the opportunity to run a write-in campaign if they're really interested.
Yep. And in that case, if we wouldn't incur costs, right, for holding an election and then turning around a month later and having a normal annual meeting. But all of that is covered in the current charter. So if anyone, go ahead.
Just say the word forthwith is a little wishy-washy, but
So,
yeah.
so that's covered in the. I understand how you just said that, but this says that the remaining members of the select board may appoint. That means they don't have to appoint.
Correct.
But in the following sentence, it says, in the event that the select board is unable to agree upon an interim replacement until the next annual or special meeting, a special election shall.
Right.
So you must.
So if after, say you've just had the election in March, and the person that got elected or somebody else from the board quits, you can't leave that position open for a whole year. So then they would advertise and interview. If there's no one that meets the qualifications or nobody they can agree on, then they've got to call a special election so that the town can vote
Now, right? Or at that time.
at that time. I mean, I can't imagine they wouldn't find a candidate that's
No, I was just
compatible or
trying to
whatever, but
understand.
that's just,
Okay.
you can't leave the seat open for a year, so yeah.
Yep.
Till the next election.
Is there a statute around that at all? On how long you have to make that? Like, could the select board stall on that because it says that they may appoint? Because if you may appoint, you don't have to make that item,
Right.
because you'll never have a disagreement if you don't make it about a agenda item. So I don't know. I just
Depends on what
I read
forthwith
way
means,
into
yeah.
it last night.
Well, I mean, if we don't try, like if we don't, I can't imagine a situation where the board would not put out a call for interested folks and make an attempt to appoint to a vacant seat.
That has happened in some towns.
But I mean, this language here doesn't fix that problem.
No.
Well, I shouldn't say problem, but that potential occurrence.
Right.
But then again, you're apt to have residents that would say, "Hey, fill the position." So.
Right. So if there are no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and ask for a motion if someone feels strongly about this one moving forward. Going twice.
I make the motion that we move 04 to the public hearing set for our previously approved dates.
Good with that? Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Ethan.
So sorry, I didn't hear the motion.
To move 04 forward.
To the public hearings.
Hmm?
I was just saying to the
Oh, yeah.
public
Okay.
hearings. So there's a motion, it's been seconded. Kendall, do you have discussion?
Yeah, so stupid question.
Yep.
There's always one. Is the blue line change of residence outside the town in the existing charter?
It is
No.
not, but it's in statute.
That it's in statute?
Correct.
Correct. Is everybody ready for the question? Okay. All those in favor of moving item 04 to 2 public hearings at the aforementioned dates, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1. And I guess we can handle it. We're just warning the public hearing. We can handle this and clean up, but wherever it says select board and the uppercase B is moved to a lowercase b, that's also in the cleanup language. So just don't want to run into a situation where, say, the organization fails, but the cleanup passes, and then you have two conflicting, like, does the B go from uppercase to lowercase, or? So just making sure that we have language only in one article as opposed to 2. I may not be explaining myself.
I know. I had this
Thoroughly.
conversation with Greg earlier today too. Like, I'm trying to picture exactly what you were saying, and I thought I had my head wrapped around it, but because I'm thinking that if this passed, it's essentially saying the same thing that the cleanup language would be saying.
Right. But if this passes and the cleanup language fails,
this would still happen here for that section. Like, you would still change the B.
I think that may be a legal conversation, because if you're voting on the same language and one goes up, one goes down, and it's not, hey, do we replace the B? That's simply stated. Like, what portion are they, like, they're voting the whole thing down, not just that one piece of it?
I'd be even more concerned about the, there might be a way to structure the question for the cleanup language in a way so that it doesn't affect the other articles, possibly. I'd almost be concerned about it the opposite way, because the cleanup language doesn't include these changes. So say if this doesn't pass and the cleanup language say this, see, I had my head wrapped around this earlier. If this passes and this doesn't have it, and this does pass, then which one? Because now you've just said you have two different versions of it, right? That's
Yep.
what I guess I'm getting
Yeah,
at.
I think
So
we're saying the same thing in a
we are,
slightly
but
different way,
yeah.
but yeah, we can have that
So I'm thinking
discussion.
maybe the wording on that cleanup language article we could ask Bill to look at that.
All right,
Yeah,
Yeah.
no sense talking more.
okay. So we have two left. We have, yes, hi.
Hi. So I don't know if Andy was gonna make this comment, but didn't we talk about it like 4 times throughout all this that we could ask for the legislator for an administrative change to change that also, like they did for select person?
Well, I think Andy was saying that this came about when that change was made.
No.
I don't.
Yeah.
You
One way or
can't.
another.
Yeah, you can't ask for administrative changes. But
Yeah.
If it
So no, it should be in
Seemed to
one
be
or
able
the
to
other. I
ask
just
for-
want to make sure
okay.
it's only in one and
not the other.
not in two.
Okay.
and the GovOps may see the request and say, "Oh, that's just an administrative change," and
Yeah,
it goes.
fast
right?
track.
Okay. I just
That's
remember that conversation.
Yep.
So I just
Yep.
didn't know if that was helpful or not.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we have two left, 5 and 8. Gonna get back to my. So 5 is the town manager, 8 is the draft amendments, which is the, I'm calling them the cleanup language.
Yeah.
So let's go
That's
ahead
what we
and-
called it too.
Yeah. Let's go ahead on to 5. This is it says town manager, but it's also officers, town manager, personnel. So there was, I guess, so there was some advice from the town attorney on the cleanup language, which is reflected in this section. And I did just answer my own question about where did the cemetery commission go. I see that that's up in the select board. So with that said, clarifying questions, comments, discussion among the board. Andy.
I'm not happy with 402, the first phrase there that says after consultation with the select board, because then it says the town manager shall appoint with the approval of the select board. So there's 2 reviews by the select board. I'd like to strike the first one, the clause that says after consultation with the select board, and let the town manager appoint and us approve.
I would make that same request if you stick with the other proposed changes. I would ask that you take out that after consultation with the select board.
Where's the other
For
one?
the reasons Andy said.
I did find that a little confusing, that it was after consultation and then with approval of.
Okay, wait a minute. Oh, wait, I see what you're saying.
Was that the only conflict?
It's the only concern I have with the changes here.
No. Think
Any other comments, questions, discussion? Not, I'm going to turn it over to the public comment. Public comment on 05, which is subchapter 2, officers, subchapter 4, town manager, subchapter 5, personnel. Seeing nothing online, seeing no hands in the room, bring it back to the board.
Make the motion that the Town of Essex Select Board approve draft amendment 05 to subchapters 2, 4, and 5, town manager, for 2 public hearings, One being on the 16th of December and January 6th, 2025.
Do you want to remove that after consultation?
Yes, and strike through the first sentence and to the comma.
Okay, so after consultation with the select board. Okay,
I'll second that.
thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Andy.
So just for clarification, it would read, the town manager shall appoint with the approval of the select board, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0, which leads us to 8. Our cleanup section.
I'm gonna find 8. I don't know where it is. Okay, where's it here?
Yeah, and that was my really only comment on this one, was the select board to select board. Just making sure that this doesn't exist, like what's in here doesn't exist in any of the other ones that
Right.
are on
I
there
think
to
the
alleviate confusion.
best thing is that I didn't send this to Bill because it's so minor that, I didn't want to, but I think what I could do is follow up with him to say, okay, so we have this general cleanup. What is the best way to present it? And then ask him how to word it and to put it together.
Sounds good. Discussion questions, Ethan?
The only thing that I have a problem with in this is the reasonably possible. I don't believe that that's an acceptable requirement for our community, and
Where
I think
are you, Ethan?
it's down under.
Oh, is this the minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so be on page 4.
page 4.
Yep.
I'm on page 130 of 249. That's the. That's not.
Right it in front of me.
Thank you. Okay. Okay.
Section 206.
206.
I can't help you in your laptop world.
My proposal is to make that 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks.
So I'm, when it said at its next meeting, there were times when we were breaking the law.
Correct.
Because the minutes weren't firmed up. So in months like June and July, where we meet only once during those months, that would put us back into the same situation where we would have to hold a special meeting just to comply with that in order to approve the minutes.
I could add too that there is laws in place that say we have to have draft minutes posted. For all the public within 5 days of the meeting.
Yeah.
But that's a law, and we do strive really hard to get that. So this is basically for the approval of the minutes by the board.
And there's no specific time frame for approval, specific approval of minutes, I don't believe.
No.
By law.
Not by law.
Well, the clerk signs it, right? Or not?
So if you have to have the draft minutes within 5 days,
Yes.
Yes.
why can't we have the approval at the next meeting?
Because they're just in draft form, so if there are errors.
We had a meeting the day
omissions,
before yesterday.
we wouldn't have time
Right.
We don't have
to.
any minutes for that meeting yet.
Yeah, so we actually violated it tonight.
Yeah.
It really does mostly happen just in instances of special meetings. That's really where you see it happen the most.
So this wouldn't stop the draft minutes from being posted, so the public can review them, read through that. At that point, it would be an unofficial record until the board takes action to make them the official minutes, but the draft still would be out there in adherence to open meeting law.
Yeah, I just don't want the reasonably possible. I mean, that's like saying,
Yeah.
your taxes are due on the 15th, but please pay them as reasonably possible, as close to the 15th as you can. Is that, you know what I mean? Not to use a
Right.
terrible example like that, but puts context to it.
Andy?
I would posit that this is not a cleanup change, that it's a change that may warrant its own question, because it's not just, we're not just changing a lowercase b to an uppercase b. This is a change in what we actually do.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
I would also add that in addition to that, it should reflect all the other ones that we're potentially asking to be approved. So it's consistent.
Tell me more about
That if there's any, like, a question about some wording, specific wording that doesn't affect the meaning of it, that it matches the other ones that we're potentially approving. I'm not being very clear that way, but.
Andy, you look like you just had an epiphany.
No, I'm going to say what I wasn't going to say before, that I think as each question is only relevant to the changes you've made, you're asking about in that question. So if you have questions in the same paragraph, if you have two different questions asking about the same paragraph, but they're different changes, they're independent changes. And so I think I fully support what Tracy is proposing, is that all of the minor edits of words and all that appear in this one and come out of any other one, so that there's no conflict of one being voted up and one being voted down.
Yeah.
And the fact that there are unchanged words in a question it's only the changes that the question relates to. It doesn't relate to approving unchanged language. We're not reapproving unchanged language, only approving the changes. And so I agree with Tracy. We shouldn't have these select board changes scattered through all of the different questions. They should all be in the same question, and they should not appear in the other ones, because then the question only applies to that question only applies to those changes. I'm repeating myself. Sorry.
It's okay. No, you just you look. I could see the light bulb above your head when I looked over. So Andy raised a point around, at its next meeting to as soon as reasonably possible. Even though that's bringing it back in line to our current process, I personally feel that that's a substantive change. How do the rest of you feel?
Yeah, and I think 604 time of holding also, although still the same concept, it is a larger change than spelling error. It's removing a whole section that's been approved by the town.
Yeah, it is a larger change. However, it's not substantively changing what that means. However, Andy, go ahead.
I think that if we put it into a question that we are stating is a cleanup section, and it's a major change, a big change like this, it looks like we're trying to hide it. I would rather have it be in its own question. That's the same reason for the change in approval date for minutes. I think it'd be easier to explain if it's out by itself, because then you could have we do our Q's and A's. We could say, and this question is to make us consistent with going to all town business by ballot, and then it's easier. I think it's easier to explain if it's not buried in potentially looking like we're trying to hide it.
206. I see 604 and then 206 are proposed as being in that category. At least I think that's 206. It's right above 207, so I would assume.
Record of proceedings 206.
Yep.
206.
So setting those two aside and focusing on the rest of 08.
Perfectly fine.
Okay. So with no other board input, I'm gonna kick it over to public comment on 08 at this point. Betsy, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Hey, yeah, I'm just wondering, for your approval of your minutes, can't you do them electronically?
The approval? No, we would have to do so in a business meeting. So we would have to have an actual meeting to have a vote. Oh, you're muted.
Muted yourself.
Sorry. I've been on other committees in the hospital and whatnot, and we didn't have to have that. We could have a approval by, you send it out in the email, you write it, and there's an approval, and you hit the approval button, and they get done.
I would venture a guess that they are not held to public meeting law.
You think?
Since we are a body of the public, we cannot take action, vote, etc., outside of an official warned public meeting.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, we sign documents that way, but those are documents we've already approved in open meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, the actual signing of them, we can. I don't see any other hands online. I don't see any hands in the room. So it's your pleasure on 08, absent 604 and 206. Do you want to make that thumbs up into a motion?
I make the motion that the Town of Essex Select Board approve 08 draft amendments to existing charter and warn a public hearing, 2 public hearings for December 16th, 2024 and January 6th, 2025.
And to be clear, that's absent.
And after, with the removal of 206 subsection B and 604 subsection A, or just 604 and 206 entirely.
Thank you. Ethan, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Andy. Any final discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Now is the question, what do we want to do with 604 and 206?
I make a motion that we warn 2 public hearings to consider separate questions for 206 and 604. Public hearings to be held on December 6th and December 16th and January 6th.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
Second.
Is that sufficient? Andy and Ethan, Ethan and Andy, you are like the charter team motion makers today. Final discussion. So actually, I'm going to turn this over to public comment since we didn't take public comment on 604 and 206 as part of 08. Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. That is the end of the public hearings for the proposed charter changes.
Charter saga.
Yes. Moving along to our next item, item K. Discussion about requirements. Is it requirements? Let me actually bring that up. Discussion about membership requirements of Development Review Board and Planning Commission.
Thank you, Tammy.
There's been.
Thanks, Tammy.
Thanks, Tammy.
Thanks, Tammy. Sorry. We have had discussions over the past number of weeks, maybe even months, around the makeup of the Development Review Board, understanding that of the 7 members on the newly formed DRB, not DOB, the majority of those members are current members of the Planning Commission. In keeping with our our rationale for forming the DRB was to allow more time for the members of the Planning Commission to focus on planning, focus on development review. Also understanding that creation of the code that goes into development, having a second set of eyes interpreting those, tends to lead toward better code because you're more focused on those unintended consequences as you're creating those planning documents. and those zoning regulations. Greg, do you have anything to add to that?
Just one minor point, minor detail. Of the people that were appointed to the DRB, one of them is an alternate to the planning commission. That position will no longer exist, so there would be 3 members who were on both boards, not four.
Excellent point, thank you.
And I missed that one a couple weeks ago, so I apologize, but it was brought to my attention.
Yep, nope, good info to have.
So just a clarification that the new DRB will have 3 current planning members on it?
Correct.
Excuse me, but I thought that other alternate got appointed to replace someone that quit on the planning committee.
Right, but the alternate only exists because the planning commission is handling development review. So when the planning commission no longer handles development review, that alternate position will no longer exist on the planning commission.
I believe the alternate's been meeting with the planning commission because their alternate services have been necessary.
And I got that, but I thought somebody else quit and she was appointed their replacement. Why did I think that?
I don't believe so. There was a fair amount of turnover.
Yeah, but
So who-
and that's,
who is-
I thought
who's
that's
our
what
alternate?
happened.
Stephanie Bixby
Yeah.
was the alternate, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we appointed a new alternate,
Okay.
and she'll no longer be on.
It's fine.
on
Right,
the-
and I
on
get
the
that, but I
planning
thought
commission,
she had stepped up to fill an open position, but okay.
And the last thing I'll say when kind of introducing this one is we did follow up with VLCT, who gave the advice that this could be part of the charter, but yet that locks us into, this is how it will be. It doesn't allow for that scalability over time. But we can also set criteria and qualifications as we wish for membership on either body. So with that,
Would that need to be a formal policy or just a criteria that the board would review? Or?
I think we could probably, it might most appropriately belong in perhaps our charge to those, but yet they're identified in statute. So I'm also,
Yeah, I think you could do either. You could adopt a select board policy, and or a development review board or planning commission policy. That's just the way you do it, or it could just be practice. The 2 options.
Andy.
I don't think we can. In spite of the VLCT using the word criteria, I think if we ask the specific question, can one of those criteria be excluding an individual because they're a member of another committee, would not be allowed, because in a Dillon's rule state, we got to do what the state says we can do, and they have, because the statute includes an explicit list of incompatible offices, we can't invent another one. I think it would have to be in the charter. It would have to be approved by the legislature in order to become law to allow us to have an additional incompatible office defined.
Ethan.
I didn't dig that deep, but for my point of conversation, my thought for tonight was going to be to allow it for the first 6 months, and then after that, I would only allow the alternate to be on both commissions or boards.
There won't be an alternate.
We don't have an alternate.
There's not going to be an alternate on the DRB?
There should be,
There
according
can
to.
be on the DRB, but that position will no longer exist on the planning
Right.
commission.
I would only allow the alternate to be also a member of the planning commission.
It would allow only an alternate on the DRB.
Right.
Because the planning commission would
Right.
no longer, or you're saying part of the alternate duties.
Well, it's saying that
to
the
set
only
that.
person who can be on both boards would be the alternate on the DRB. They could be a member of the planning commission, and they could be the alternate on the DRB.
Okay, now I understand. Thank you for that.
But it would be, the first 6 months, or I would compromise to a year, if it's allowed, to allow the board to just create and exist. And then my thinking over the weekend, early last night at 11:30, was to allow the alternate to serve on both boards. But if we can't, then we can't. But that was my thought, and I was willing to negotiate.
Well, and I thought when we were first studying DRBs, that was the recommendation, that you have a separate DRB and a separate planning, but have the one alternate that does both. I'm pretty sure I read that somewhere when we were just studying what a DRB was.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
But to get back to this is that, you know, and I vented my frustration before, is the fact that we created the DRB to take away some of the workload from planning. And yet we turned around and put all these planning people on the DRB. So we've really just doubled the workload for these members. And I don't think that that's what we should have done. So, but
Kendall, thoughts?
I was going to offer that my opinion was that it seemed to be the main push for separating the two was that there was apt to be a conflict between something that was approved by the DRB and maybe not approved by planning or vice versa. So I could see the only practical value of considering something would be to make sure that there wasn't a quorum of members of both boards on the same boards. I mean, if you had a select board and another board that did the same thing as select board, and you had the three same members on both boards, they'd be running both. They could potentially run both boards. They would always be in agreement or so. Whereas if you didn't have a quorum like that, you could eliminate that possibility. But I mean, that's just my opinion.
Andy, go ahead.
Statute explicitly allows overlap. So again, I don't think we can use that as a criteria for not appointing people.
Yeah, and we have run into that before, Kendall, where like one body can meet in another body's warned meeting, but no business of the unwarned body can be discussed. Otherwise, you'd have a public meeting violation.
Yeah.
Don? Oh, sorry, I thought you had your hand up.
holding my chin, sorry.
Yeah, Ethan.
So for the sake of time and us having different ideas, can we ask Greg to look at legal review and tell us our options set in stone?
I got that from VLCT, and that's what's in the packet. I didn't go to our own town attorney, but I used an attorney from VLCT to get that information.
Yeah, and I think from this discussion this evening, it's sort of seeing what interest and ideas exist on the board before moving toward, drafting something up, making a recommendation for where it most appropriately lies, but absent kind of this isn't warned for action, but absent a consensus of board members, I would hate to see Greg and other staff put in the time to draft something up if there's no interest in moving that forward.
So, I'm sorry. Is it possibly allowed?
Which part?
Making requirements?
For VLCT,
This is-
I think the question is whether criteria can include membership on another committee.
The state statute, I don't know, Andy, where you read it, it just says, the one I just clicked on here, because it was in the packet. Now I've lost it here. Members that board. Now I've lost what I was going to. This is not good. So if it establishes a development review board and appoints members to that board, the development review board in that municipality until its existence is terminated by act. Wait a minute. Hold on. All right. The Board of Adjustment or Development Review Board for a rural town or urban municipality may consist of the members of the planning commission of that town or may include one or more members of the planning commission. So we could say at that point you can only have one member of the planning commission. I mean, it's too late now because we've already done your appointments, but under Part B.
Yeah, I think if you want to look at setting some sort of limitation or criteria to overlapping membership. I can go back to VLCT and or the town attorney and ask Andy a very specific question about incompatible offices. Apart from that, nothing in statute. You could have all 7 members of the planning commission could be the 7 members of the development. That is completely allowed. That is specified in statute that you can do that. I think the question is, do you want to put some sort of limitation on it? DLCT had said that the select board can adopt a policy or informally set criteria / qualifications for who they want to appoint to them, to the 2 boards. So I think if you do want to have those limitations, that's where I would go back to get another more in-depth legal review as to the best way to set those limitations.
So,
Does that make sense?
informal poll, are we interested in gaining that information?
I think so.
I am,
I guess I'm most comfortable at this point where, what is the public's wish? I mean, they wanted a separate DRB and planning, maybe they should be asked a question and make a charter change for that. Ask the public. Statute's pretty clear. It is very clear, like you said, 7-7, it makes no difference, we're all the same, so.
So with that, I think this is a good time to move over into public comment on potentially adding in criteria about overlap of DRB and Planning Commission membership. So again, if you're in the room, you can raise your hand. If you're online, you can raise your virtual hand.
Or take a seat.
Yeah, or just
I was already up.
go ahead, Ken.
Ken Signorello. Regardless of what the requirements are or allowances, you appoint members of these boards. We don't know what goes on behind the scenes, what the conversations are like, but you can decide what members serve on each board and what overlap exists. It was without, at least from my understanding, and my personal opinion is the intent of what we did in the last charter change was to not have overlap between the DRB and the Planning Commission. I understand you were short of applications. You needed just 5 to have a quorum. So it wasn't as though you had to appoint all 7. I don't think you can unappoint anybody. But I want to remind you that you don't have to have restrictions to do what the voters are asking you to do. You can just acknowledge that the voters wanted a separate DRB, separate planning commission, for the very purposes that Kendall stated. So we would not have influence from one on the other. I'm disappointed, and I think others are as well, at the way things have gone on this. And I hope it can be rectified as soon as possible. Thanks.
Thanks, Ken. Any other public comment on this item? Hubie, come on up.
Yeah, Hubie Norton. I am currently on the zoning board and I've been appointed to the DRB. I've expressed this opinion before that it's always seemed a little strange to me that in the current situation we have now, which is going to change, that the Planning Commission makes the rules and then they adjudicate the rules. It seems kind of strange. And I think that what the state did by creating the DRB separated that, which is a good idea. Unfortunately, you only had 7 applicants. That's the problem. I believe that 5 members would be adequate. You do not need 7 members on the board. We've had 5 members on a zoning board for as long as I can ever remember. I don't recall that we've had a problem meeting a quorum. Sometimes there's only 3, and we'll have to agree, but that's not a problem. 7, it's there's a lack of volunteers. So, one way to correct that would be to make the boards only be 5 members long, and I think that would be wholly adequate. Also, when we had earlier discussions about transitioning, Catherine led the meetings and we talked about this, that it would be good to have someone from the Planning Commission be on the DRB, primarily for process. because they're more experienced with site plan review. You know, what are the kinds of steps that you go through and what are the things you're looking at and so on. So to be able to have some of that expertise from the Planning Commission on a DRB would be a good idea. Clearly, they can't bring their influence of the Planning Commission, you know, other than, like I say, from a process standpoint. So, again, it's unfortunate. You only had 7 applicants. So, to me, the solution is you make each, if you want to keep the Planning Commission at 7, fine. Make the DRB only 5. And I'm not sure if that can be done now or if that ship has sailed. But that's how I view it. And I know that I can see a problem or a potential problem that the meetings would have to be very controlled, that a Planning Commission member wouldn't be able to insert, you know, their Planning Commission opinion about if we were doing a site plan review. So they could certainly, I would think, provide their opinion about how the regulation may read. That could be for anyone's purpose, but that they would have to be careful not to bring their personal influence or bias from the Planning Commission into a DRB meeting. That's a little, you know, tricky area, but anyway, that's how I feel.
Thank you, Hubie. Margaret, I see you at the top of the list with your hand up.
Hi, yes, thank you. I think that our hope was that there would be a separation between the Planning Commission and the DRB in order to help forward the building process in Essex. I understand that the Essex Junction has only 5 members on their Planning Commission and DRV, and I think no overlap between the 2 committees. If you reduce the number on both committees to 5, you would have almost enough people, I think, to fill both boards. So, like Hubie said, I don't know if that ship has sailed, but it's too bad that wasn't a consideration back then. Anyway, the plan was to keep them separate, and I think that would be the best idea. Thank you.
Sharon Zukowski.
Hi there. I'm going to say ditto to what the other people have been saying, but also have to add in that I don't think the ship has sailed. I mean, I wouldn't do it now, but the statute allows the municipality to have a special meeting to reduce the number of members. So perhaps it could be done when, you know, some of the terms end or something like that. And then it wouldn't be an issue to get enough volunteers. Sure.
Come on up.
From the newest member.
I figured I sat here all this time. I might as well say something, right? So Ian Carroll, town resident. I will acknowledge that I am both a member of the Planning Commission and newly appointed member of the DRB. So I come from a little bit different perspective than everybody else at this point. I do see value in being on both commissions. I do see the value in the idea and the concept of trying to form the town and understand what the regulations are that we want adjusted. But I feel a lot of that information that we would normally get in the Planning Commission from the developers that are coming and the people who are trying to build the buildings and build the housing that we're looking for. And so having that dual role allows us the opportunity to have our foot in both worlds and be able to make the town plans prosper in areas where the town people and the developers can both meet, as well as enforcing the concepts on the developmental review board that the town plans really are trying to formulate. So that's just my 2 cents.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What happens if the two conflict?
It's a really good question.
DRB wants
Yep.
one thing and planning wants something else.
That's a really good question. You have to abide by the quorum, and so I'm on the planning commission may not necessarily be in favor of something that comes before the DRB. I have the right to vote no as far as that is concerned, and vice versa on the planning commission. If I know that there's a zoning change that I want to see changed because I know in the developmental review is something that will help us, I'm going to vote that way. And if we end up, you have to vote your conscience. So, and that's why we have the numbers that we have, so that you have the opportunity to have some dissension and still be able to proceed with business.
Good, Don?
I'm good.
Ethan?
Can I ask him a question?
Sure.
Sure.
Do
I'm here all day.
Okay. Me too.
21 minutes.
Do you yeah. Yeah, according to
The
that.
clock hasn't gone.
Yeah, that
If
clock's gone. Okay, it's only 9.
oh my goodness.
Is it
I
finally
lost my
right?
whole brain. Let me find it. Oh, there it is. If okay, since you're on the planning commission
Mhm.
for a bit of time now, with the 7 membership,
Mhm.
have the alternate needing to be used all the time.
Mhm.
Do you see that as an issue on both boards, especially with limited volunteerism?
It's a good question. Understanding that the planning commission going forward won't have an alternate, and understanding that I don't know that you need to have an alternate on the DRB. I think 7 is enough. I'm not sure that we are in a position where I don't think you need to have an alternate on the planning commission. I think 7 is enough. I think should the PC remain at 7, it's something that you guys can think about as the idea, do we need to remain at 7? Could we go down to 5 at that point? It really depends on, I would say, I would do that as we turn the page in January and we start this process and try to understand a little bit better as terms come up. That's certainly a conversation. Do we need to fill that position again, or do we decrease the number at that point? I don't know if that answered your question or not, but
Yeah, I just was looking for some insight from somebody who's seen the alternate have to step up all the time because the planning commission members are absent in those times.
yeah, and I do see. I mean, one of the biggest challenges that I can see for us taking a step forward is that as a planning commission member, I'm really doing development review every time we have a meeting. We're not really spending a lot of time on the planning. When we start moving towards the planning piece,
You just said the whole purpose. Right. Okay.
as we start turning towards the planning piece, we're going to have a little bit different of a focus. So the idea that we might not need 7 to do the planning piece of it is possible, but we won't know until we get our hands into it.
Valid point. Thank you.
Sure.
Margaret's hands up again.
Can I ask one? Was there another person? Sorry.
Yeah, Margaret, is that a leftover hand or is that a new one?
No, I had a question.
Okay.
I heard that there were 4 people who were on the planning commission and also on the DRB. Is that correct?
Once the DRB is fully formed, and I'll say enacted because they are technically formed, they're just not as if you'll take it as doing business as yet. But once the alternate no longer exists on the planning commission, there would only be 3 members of the planning commission on the newly formed DRB.
That still seems like an awful lot of influence from one commission to the other. And I still think 5 is plenty, but okay, thank you.
Thank you, Margaret.
So I have a question. And I think
Yes.
this is probably going to be a great question. Can the select board legally recommend that the same person doesn't chair both committees? Or recommend?
That is, oh, sorry.
Can you,
go ahead.
I don't know.
I'd
Because I
have
think
to-
that would affect the overlap of the two, but I'm not sure.
I think that is totally within the authority of the
Of each
board
board?
itself to organize themselves. Ethan.
And to a comment that was made earlier about the select board just not appointing, a memory pops in my head from all the things I've learned from Mr. Watts is that the select board has to give a reason why they appoint or not appoint. So you can't have the reason be a conflicting powers, right? From the, you can't say because you're on the planning commission we didn't appoint you, or because you're the chair of the planning commission we didn't appoint you, because that would violate what we were questioning if we can make a. So there's really no other option of either we leave it be or we have to figure out, can we make a policy that has a requirement? Because right now our appointment policy is that we give a reason, yes or no.
So on that note, I was just going to ask for consensus among the board if this is something that we are interested in Greg speaking with the attorney, having a deeper dive with VLCT, and bringing something back to us that we can actually discuss on paper. I'm seeing heads nodding.
Can we include potential membership numbers in that?
I think we can include, I think the criteria
Criteria
part of
is the
that
right
is
word, yeah.
fairly broad, but it would be good to know what we could or could not or should steer away from. And that would be part of Greg's conversation. Andy?
I think Greg got enough other stuff to do, and that the statute's clear to me.
All right, so with that, I'm going to cross K off my list and move along to consider approval of letter to Vermont Department of Taxes regarding improper collection of local option tax.
This is an easy one. I make the motion that the select board send a letter to the Vermont Department of Tax Commissioner Craig Bolio regarding local option tax, follow-up and action requested.
Thank you.
Nice letter, by the way.
Thank you, Don. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. Let's go ahead and discuss that motion. Andy?
I have concerns about some of the wording. I'm sorry I didn't have the bandwidth today to propose an edit, but if you look at the letter that came from Commissioner Bolio, it does say in there what they have done. And it also says in there that 9-digit zip code is not the way to go, that they're strongly encouraging online businesses to use the geolocation software that they have available, that they and so I'm thinking some of the language in there is a little too strong with regard to, for one, saying they haven't done anything, and I think pointing toward the 9-digit zip code is taking things backwards instead of forwards. Sorry, but
No, that's fine. I'll readily admit that I had my ornery Tracy hat on when I drafted this. So yes,
I like that.
it probably is a little more strongly worded than perhaps it should be. However, I do get very frustrated when residents of our town are improperly charged to the benefit of another municipality. I think that is something that we should stand firm on. Maybe not in the words that I used. However, I think what I would suggest is, I know Andy was going to propose some edits. Could we push this to the next meeting and have folks, if you do have edits, submit them to Greg, and we can revisit this at our next meeting? Would that be okay with everyone? But I also understand that we have a motion and a second on the floor, so it's really up to the makers of those motions.
It's wise to have Andy soften it a bit, I would say. But I agree with everything that's said in the letter. It's like,
That's why I think it should go the way it is. I don't think it needs to be softened.
so,
I would rather not rescind my motion at this time.
but
It's always told, as long as you're honest, it's okay to be firm.
I like that.
So the motion and the second stand. If this fails, I think we would need a replacement letter to consider to bring it up for another motion, or does this just kill the whole thing?
I think you can propose another letter.
Another letter? Okay. All right, so the letter that's in the packet, motion has been made and seconded. Actually, let's go to public comment before we take a vote, if there is any. Seeing none online, none in the room. Andy?
Can I just give a little background as to why we're here right now? Google recently started collecting sales tax for cloud services, and so my wife spends $1.99 to store her pictures in the cloud, and it went from $1.99 to $2.13 recently. So I said, oh, they're charging sales tax. And I said, wait a minute, that's 14 cents instead of 12 cents. And so that triggered me to notify the state tax department. They contacted, or my wife was in contact with Google. I connected the state tax department with the person that my wife was talking to at Google, and Google told them, oh, we're using 9-digit zip code. And so state tax department came back to me and said, well, just put your 9-digit zip code in there. And then so when this came out in the packet, including the letter from Craig Bolio, or Commissioner Bolio, that says don't use 9-digit zip code, that's where I'm frustrated with having the letter go out as is, because it recommends and asks for telling everybody they should use 9-digit zip code, which is not correct because the state no longer publishes the 9-digit zip code list. And so even if they start using 9-digit zip code, our 9-digit zip codes won't be on that list, and so we'll still be charged the tax. I think I'm waiting till the 10th of November to find out whether my next bill includes the 2 cents. And so all of this argument is over 2 cents a month for me, but it's 2 cents a month for anybody who's using this service. It's going to add up to a bunch of money. So anyway, just wanted to share some of the background too, and that I think some of the content of this letter is incorrect.
And when I drafted that, I wasn't aware of the geolocation advice.
I withdraw my second.
Okay, so we no longer have a
Fine.
motion. So yeah, on this one, and you withdrew your second. On this one, if you do have edits, updates, so on and so forth, please get them to reduce the ornery Tracy that came out in drafting that letter. Yes.
Ken Signorello. I do a lot of buying online, and I run across this problem with some companies. Plenty of them get it right. There's absolutely no excuse for Google to not get this right. And it's the responsibility of our tax department to make them get it right and fine them if they don't. I've been fined for an improper tax filing, so I think the state can certainly do that. And I think then Google might just wake up and say, well, maybe we need to fix this problem. There's really no excuse. I can't read the letter for some reason. The internet isn't working all of a sudden. I doubt you could not be strong enough. I think that there's really no excuse. It really isn't. Thanks.
Thanks, Ken. I think if we add in some of Andy's input on the geolocation and those items, I think we'll end up with a better letter overall.
So we're going to edit it and come back next meeting with...
That is the plan, is that? Oh, okay. Yep.
I make the motion that we table The letter of the local option tax.
There is no motion on the
Oh.
table to table.
We can't table it.
We can't table a motion.
Oh,
It's
okay.
an active.
Sorry. Tried.
But we will delay until the next meeting. And with that, we do not have executive session this evening. We've already covered both executive session items in our public session, so I will move right along expeditiously to the reading file, board member comments, meeting schedule.
I will express that I am always very impressed by our committees and commissions that come and give us an update with the amount of work that they do, how articulate they are, and how interesting everything they perform for the town is. It's incredible.
Yes. Kudos and a big thank you.
I'd like to thank Essex PD for the information they provided on the National Prescription Drug Take Back Day. And I thought it was amazing that the town of Essex had one of the highest amounts of take back drugs out of all the towns that participated. So it's awesome that the police department advertised it so well and got such a great response. But it's also troubling that there's so many things out there that need to be returned. But
True.
just they did an awesome job getting that taken care of. So.
Yep. More kudos. I do want to point out VLCT's Municipal Service Award for Municipal Road Crews of Vermont. With recent storms and flooding and so on and so forth, very well deserved, and just want to express some gratitude to all the road crews around Vermont.
Here, here. Hooray.
And with that, I would entertain a motion. Kendall,
I'm sorry, I
go
gotta
ahead.
keep
No,
you
no,
for
go ahead.
2 more minutes. Of course I do. Of course
Almost
I
got
do.
it out.
I did have a couple questions about the Susie Wilson Road thing, but I can take those up later. I did want to ask another stupid question as a resident.
No
about
such
the
thing as a
reappraisal
stupid
plan
question.
approval letters. So, I was visited last fall, and all that information they've been doing, they're taking everything from all the residents up until like January or so, and then they will do the reassessment and everything, and every resident will get a letter after that with the change. Okay, that was it.
In
Thank
May,
you.
Yeah.
in May or June. Those letters will come out in May or June, right? Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I'd had a lot of questions about, because we were visited, our neighbors were and stuff, and then we got our appraisal this spring, and it was like, oh, it didn't change.
Yeah.
No.
No, it doesn't go in this.
No,
Not till 2025, Kendall.
Okay,
another year.
Yeah.
Another
that
year.
was it. Thank you.
Okay. And with that, I would
make
entertain
them-
a motion to adjourn.
I make the motion we adjourn. You're too.
Thank you, Don. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan.
Did I miss
To
something?
adjourn or non-debatable, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay. We are now adjourned. Thank you.